Yo, what's going on, guys? Another episode here of the CTW podcast. Boy, do we have a great one in store today, don't we?
Yeah, we were both, I think, super excited to get Kerry McCoy on the podcast, and it's a great one.
Absolutely, and we appreciate Coach McCoy taking his time. He did it on like a day's notice and was filming out in California. Obviously there's a big time change. We filmed it in the morning over the weekend, and really appreciate him taking the time. He's going to talk about what he's up to now with the California RTC, talk about his days as a competitor at all levels, both internationally and in the NCAA, even touches a little bit of high school and junior league in there. This one is one you don't want to miss. I'm really pumped up for it. Jason, before we get – how can I forget? He also talks about the last 10 years as the head coach of the University of Maryland. Super informative, super entertaining. Talk about a down-to-earth guy. Maryland is going to miss him. Before we get started with it, Jason, a couple of new sponsors on tap today.
Yeah, first new sponsor is SaveWrestling.org. So the Save Wrestling Fund is raising money to put directly towards trying to save these college programs that are getting dropped. Most recently, ODU, Stanford, which we touch on in the podcast. And, getting women's programs started, local wrestling programs. So visit SaveWrestling.org and donate today.
Another great company is Flex Apparel. Flex is providing all sorts of great stuff, whether it be wrestling, shoes, singlets, shirts, total 100% completely customized. Guys, I don't know what looks cool. That's just not my thing. I'll go to my kids and yield to their judgment. But whatever you want, Flex can make it. They're really doing great things. This hat, I've been wearing it for the last 2 years, for God's sakes. It still holds the test of time. It's like Jordan Burroughs, man. It just doesn't slow down. Nowhere near stopping. So if you want quality stuff that, looks cool, that the kids are going to love, super comfortable, and is going to last forever, visit the Flex brand. You want to see what these guys are doing. It's the latest and greatest in wrestling apparel. Let's do it, man. We're going to kick it off. Let's not take any more time, right? Let's sit back, relax, enjoy the next little bit, learning from Kerry McCoy.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Yo, what's going on, guys? Back with another episode of the CTW podcast. Ryan with you as always, here with Jason. Jason, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, man?
How you feeling?
Same as always.
Yeah, it's a great, it's our 10th episode, I think.
I think it's 11. I think it's 11.
Is it 11? I can't count. Whatever. Once I get to the thumbs, I'm done on this. So, but it's every week I feel like we're talking about how excited we are for our guest, and Doug McLean, Rob Whittles, these are guys that I really wanted to get on. But as far as being super excited, and I was kind of lying about that just to hype it up. They're buddies of mine too. But this is super exciting for us. Coming to us from California, the former coach and longtime coach at University of Maryland, Kerry McCoy, wrestling legend. What's going on, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's an honor to have you. I really appreciate it. What time is it out your way?
It's about 10 after 8.
Okay.
Not too early.
Yeah, when I proposed the one time at like 10, and he was like, I'm in California. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I could do it, but give me an extra hour. That'll help me out a little bit.
It's no appreciation for the guest. If you guys
I know,
make sure your appreciation, you come my way and not Jason. He's only thinking about himself all the time. How are things going out west? Is it, it was about a month ago that you were named the coach of the RTC in California?
Yeah, just a little bit over a month ago. It was a pretty good situation. We were transitioning, out of the Maryland. I retired from Maryland, decided to step away from college coaching for a while, and I didn't really have a set plan. I'm a very faithful person, and I just trusted that, God was telling me that it was time to do something else. And, I didn't know what that was, but it was time to step away. And so took that last year, and it was really a rewarding time because I really got to reconnect with my family. As coaches, many of us, we don't really have that work-life balance thing figured out.
Right.
And as much as we try, it's just, it's a challenge. It's a challenge of doing it the right way, and it's a relativity what the right way is. So during the years coaching, and I think I was doing doing the best. I thought I was doing the best that I could, but then as you look back, you can always do a little bit better. And that's the challenge of figuring out how to really balance and keep things a priority. So this last year, I was really able to pour into my family and be around and be present. I think that's really the biggest thing that a lot of coaches are challenged with. Like, you can be there, you can sit on the couch and, your kids are watching TV and you're sitting on the couch and you're on your phone texting or checking your email, checking, things like that. Or on the weekends, you're there at their games or their events, but you're on your phone, you're trying to manage the things which are important, but at the same time, you got to really be present. So I think that was one of the biggest things that I was able to focus on this last year, is just being there, not worrying about my phone, not checking emails, social media, things like that. And, with my kids, 2 kids and my wife, it was just a huge blessing. And then as opportunities we started looking at, we had a few things we were considering, and, nothing seemed to be quite right, just wasn't the right fit. And so we just, we kept our faith, trusted in God's plan, and knew that something would come around. And this opportunity, so Jason Borelli, who's the head coach at Stanford, he called me a few weeks ago, and we were just kind of talking about the RTC structure and, what's the best way to do it? How can you be most effective? And, so we just had a conversation. Jason and I have known each other for a long time, and, we talk consistently every couple of weeks anyway. So it's just a conversation between friends. And then at the end of the conversation, he said, well, this is some great information. I got some thinking to do. And, if we get this thing rolling, would you be interested? And I said, we weren't saying no to any opportunities, we're exploring everything. And I said, sure, it's something that we've always talked about going back to California, but it wasn't one of those things that we thought was going to be possible, just because, the timing of it, moving and everything. And so we just we're interested, we'll see where it goes. And then as the weeks kind of unfolded, had a couple of opportunities that we were looking at, and this came, and it just kept coming back where, how about this? How about this? How about this? So all the things that we were kind of hesitant about, they just, they were answered, and that's what I say. I think it was God's way of showing me that this is where we should go. And, not by, it wasn't like this Shangri-La where, everything is perfect. We had to make some sacrifices. The biggest thing of leaving Maryland, we're there for 12 years and had some great relationships and, great area, great neighborhood, close to our family. So, that was a big part of it, but, really truly believe that this is where we're being led. So that's kind of how the situation unfolded. And, ever since then we've been, just grinding, getting everything work. We were fortunate. We sold our house, within a week of listing it, which was pretty awesome. And then getting out here, and now everything is rolling. So we're just making our way here, trying to figure out how to function with the with the RTC, and getting the kids ready for school, and all the other things that everyone else is managing during these crazy times.
Sure. Now, how long does a process like that take? Because somebody like Jason and I will read something on Intermatter Flow that the decision's been made. You don't strike me as the type of guy that is just going to jump headfirst into something without doing your due diligence. I mean, we're talking about a cross-country relocation here.
Yeah.
When did the initial contact start with that? And then, and was it just small talk at the beginning and hypotheticals, or was it more like, hey, you're getting something offered to you, come on out and do this?
Yeah, no, the initial conversation was completely, in my opinion. So I've told people, I think Jason may have had a bigger picture in his mind, but when we talked initially, it was just small talk. It was like, hey, would this be something you're interested in? After we just talked about what the situation could look like. It wasn't set. They were basically redesigning their entire RTC structure. So I think he was kind of formulating it. And and then it was probably, I'd say, easy 3 to 4 weeks of communication during the process. Maybe even since our initial conversation, maybe a week to 10 days before the actual idea of that, hey, we might make this happen. Are you still interested? I think we had a couple of those conversations in that 3 or 4 weeks of, hey, if we got this, would you still be, or, is this something you think could make work? And then it kind of unfolded over that. But it was a, probably a 4 or 5 week process before, I'd say it was probably 3 weeks before an official offer, like, hey, we want you to come out. And then probably another 2 or 3 weeks of figuring out, like, what it's going to look like, how it's going to do it, and if we can do it. So, So yeah, it was a process, but yeah, like you say, when you look online, you see these things, you think it just happened overnight.
Breaking news. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm sure the decision was made a little bit easier. You just being familiar with, being at Stanford before, you know at least what to expect with the area and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And during this process, I challenged my wife a little bit, and I said, when we're looking at opportunities, I would tell her, I say, where do you want to live, right? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to be? And we'll look at opportunities there. Obviously we're comfortable where we were in Maryland, so we're looking at opportunities around there, and opportunities where we're comfortable. We both graduated from Penn State, so opportunities in State College, and spent a long time in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. So looking around there, and in California, we had a great time. We were here last time, so we were looking at opportunities out here. But it wasn't, hey, just kind of see what happens. It was kind of a strategic search, just trying to figure out what was the best fit for us. So my main impact, or my main focus when I decided to transition out of college coaching, was I want to be in a place where I can have the most positive impact on a broader scale. Without a doubt, coaching in college, you get 30 or 40 athletes a year, you get 8 to 10 staff, you hit a big variety, a big range of people that you have a positive impact on. And I loved it, no question. The things I was able to pour into the people that I work with, and learn from the people that I work with. And I just knew I wanted to be able to broaden that spectrum. And so, we were looking for opportunities all over the place that I would be able to do that, in and out of athletics. And so when I told her, I said, tell me where you want to go. And she was kind of hesitant. She'll tell the story. She was hesitant to say, Palo Alto, because she just didn't think it was going to be possible. And we thought down the line, when the kids are out of school, doing their thing, we can get a little 2-bedroom condo in one of these places and just kind of retire and kick back. So she didn't really think the idea of it happening this soon was really out there. So she was kind of hesitant to say it. So when the opportunity came up, she was really excited. And then, all the potential hesitations that were coming in, she would bring them up, and they would get answered, and they would get resolved. So she was really happy about that process as well.
Okay. Now, when you're making a decision like that, because obviously somebody of your caliber and your wrestling history and coaching history, you're going to have options, right? Obviously, it's a job, finances, and what kind of money you make is going to go into it. I would assume creative control and funding for the program, permission from the wife, at least if you're me. I would need permission from the wife to make a decision like that. What would you say are your top priorities going into making that decision? Why was it so appealing to you?
Number one is family, right? So I wanted to make sure my family would be taken care of. And that's a broad statement, right? Because there's so many different ways, but I wanted to make sure that, we could live out here, so the financial stability, schools, Palo Alto School District is some of the best schools in the country. Having a connection, like you said, being out here before, we have some friends. Actually, one of my high school and college teammates, John Lange, who wrestled with me, he was one of the guys that basically kept me in the sport when I was younger. He lives over in the East Bay, about 30, 40 minutes away. My wife's got strong connections. When she was out here, she was a teacher, and the principal at the school she taught at, and the administrator of that board, she's really close with. Obviously, the Stanford coaches, Jason Borelli was my assistant for a year, and I've kept contact with him, and his wife and my wife are really close. Ray Blake was he was a senior my first year out here. Then he coached with me for a year, and then Alex Tirapelli, who's the assistant coach. I've got to know him a lot over the last few years. Especially, he was an assistant at Stanford, then head coach at Penn, and then back at Stanford. So I had those fundamental foundation relationships that were really important. So I knew that we wouldn't be on an island. There's still some other people too. Daniel Cormier is about 45 minutes south in Gilroy, and being able to have that relationship with him and some of the guys that come through his AKA club. So just there were a lot of touch points that it wasn't 50 people that I went to elementary school with, but there were enough people in the area and in the decision that knew that, hey, when we get out here, we're gonna have some foundation to build off of.
That's right. Now, before we get to the questions everybody wants to know, there's something I've always wanted to know, and maybe you can answer it for me. Why is there no S at the end of Cardinal? I don't. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So Stanford Cardinal, it's the color, not the bird. So Cardinal red. So that's what it is. So yeah, that's what everyone thinks, and it really throws people off because the mascot is a redwood tree, and it's actually, well, the mascot's a tree, but they don't really actually have an official mascot. But you see on logos and you see on patches and stuff that it has a tree through the S, but it's really the color, Stanford Cardinal.
I thought they just really like Christmas. I thought it was like a Christmas tree behind it.
Yeah,
I had no idea. So I appreciate that. So it's about the cardinal. I guess you wouldn't. What's the color? You wouldn't pluralize.
Yeah.
However you say
Yeah.
that.
You got it.
Obviously, I wouldn't make it into Stanford if I can't even. But well, the elephant in the room is obviously a week ago, Stanford announced that they're going to be dropping their wrestling program. Is that effective immediately, or is that after this?
It's after next year, I thought, right?
Yeah, 2021, the 2021 season, and after the 2021 season, they were discontinuing 11 varsity sports, and wrestling was one of them. And it's it's a crazy situation, obviously, for me and my family. Coming out here and being affiliated with Stanford was a big part of our move, and everyone, shockwaves throughout the wrestling community and shockwaves throughout athletics in general, just because anytime a program makes such a big move, I mean, 11 sports is a big move. So there's a coalition, there's a group together that are looking to keep the program. It's hashtag Keep Stanford Wrestling. All social Keep Stanford Wrestling, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, website Keep Stanford Wrestling, and that's the focus with it. It's we have a program, we have an opportunity to compete this year and build. So a lot of times you see these initiatives and they focus on the wrong things, and we're focused on keeping the program, right? The program's intact, so we're keeping it, and there's a lot of things going into it, and it's it's going to be a battle just like any time, but there's a lot of resources available, a lot of people connected to this program on and off the mats that are really motivated, and we're looking forward to some good news. So we're focused on being positive, being productive, and being proactive. And obviously, situations like this, there is a little bit of reaction, but the focus is to be proactive and really solidify our position to be here for a long time.
So, and you said the action or the website and Facebook is Keep Stanford Wrestling.
Keep Stanford Wrestling.
Cool. I'm going to encourage everybody to check that out. Everybody that tunes in here, especially. Speaking of which, do you have any idea what it's going to take to keep Stanford Wrestling? What kind of
I guess is money, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you look, and Stanford did a great job of outlining their points of, why the decisions were made. And, you respect those decisions, and, we respectfully disagree with a lot of them, especially when it comes to wrestling. So financial stability is a big part of it. Title IX is a big part of it. Competitive excellence is a big part of it. So those are the top three things. And, if you look at it, getting the program endowed is a big step. And there's some endowments at Stanford with the wrestling program, so building those up. Title IX, looking at the components of balancing, increasing the opportunity for women's wrestling, increasing opportunity for some of the other sports that are here at Stanford. And, really when you look at it, Stanford wrestling was poised to be, top 10 team this coming year with 3 top 10 freshmen and, finishing, top 20 the last couple of years. It really put themselves. So, the competitive excellence is there. The gender equity piece of it is easily addressed with some creative thinking. And the financial part, when you have the resources available in the alumni base and in the community, really just engaging everyone in the sport as a whole to make that happen. So those are the 3 things that are focused on. And, we don't have a crystal ball that says, okay, if you do this, this is going to happen. But, those are the things that typically make the college athletic world go around. So we're focusing on that, and really just engagement and really making sure that we have a strong position to have the conversation. And once you have the conversation, then you can get to more guidance and direction.
Sure. Now, do you think sometimes it's a school like Stanford that's out west, they don't get the attention or maybe even like the respect that some of the Midwest and East Coast? It seems like, once you obviously the middle of the country, there's a lot of attention being given to a lot of the teams there. And then now even moving back east, but out west, you just don't seem to hear about them as much, the Stanford. But like you said, 3 top 5, high-ranking freshmen. I think one of them was even undefeated going in the NCAA tournament this year. Is that just me being on the East Coast and the way that I view wrestling, or is that nationwide that sometimes out West they're not getting maybe the attention and respect they deserve?
Yeah, I think it's a little combination of recency bias, I guess. I don't know if that's the right one, but just like what you see most often, that's what you kind of identify with. I think that the creative opportunities there are when you're talking about that on the West Coast is when you get Shane Griffith, who's a true freshman that goes undefeated, he's the number 3 seed in the NCAA tournament, and you hear he's from Stanford, people are like, what? And that's where it comes to. But people that follow the sport throughout the year, you see this guy is knocking off this guy, winning the Southern Scuffle and, doing this, doing that. So when you follow the sport, you see those guys. And so it's a combination of if you're following and you're in the sport and you see in the big events when those guys perform at a high level, you go back and you think about West Coast wrestling. I mean, Arizona State's the only West Coast team to win a national championship. And people still talk about that to this day because, the way they did it, Bobby Douglas is the head coach, it's still one of those things. And so I think the idea of when you're following it, it gets to be a little bit more fresh in your mind. There's so much activity on the East Coast that sometimes it's, a dual meet in California starts at 7 o'clock at night, which is 10 o'clock on the East Coast. So you may not be able to get the same coverage, but, Penn State came out here within the last couple of years and they wrestled and they, had a huge sellout crowd to do that. They've done outdoor duels, one of the first couple of programs to do outdoor duels and jumping on that and doing some spotlight stuff. So there's a lot of stuff going on with the programs out here. It's just, the recency bias is what I'll call it, which somebody much smarter than me will come and tell me if that's the right term or not. But I think just, the idea of, what you're next to, you see. But really on the West Coast, there's been a lot of growth in wrestling, especially in the high school. The California is one of the biggest states, has the most wrestlers in high school, and building out and keeping those athletes on the West Coast is a big push overall. But it's definitely a challenge of the time difference and the awareness and what people are seeing on a regular basis. But I think when you see, especially like a program like Stanford that's finished multiple All-Americans in the last couple of years, got some young guys coming in that are being in a hunt to challenge for a national championship, and even more so, with the RTC, we got Olympic level athletes that are training here and making that push. So the awareness is growing definitely, and it's going to be really fun for the next few years to make a big impact, big splash.
And one of the questions that we got from people writing in, Kramer Whitelaw specifically wrote it in. I don't know if you've interacted with him much as the Maryland national coach, but what are the effects now of your position at the RTC if worst case scenario the wrestling program at Stanford ends?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I'm a realist to the core, but I also have faith and I have optimism, and I'm not even thinking about what if this happens, because you've heard it said a lot of different ways, right? If you have a plan B, that takes away from plan A. So plan A is keep the program, and we're moving like that. The nice thing about the RTC structure, even though there might be a little bit of misguided activity for some of them, but the reality of the RTC structure is it is built to be connected to the college program, but not to be dependent on the college program, right? It's independent of the college program, and our focus with the RTC is to help young men and women, old men and women, wrestlers of all ages to pursue their world and Olympic dreams. The one thing that's unique about ours is we have like a 3-prong system where we're focusing on the 360-degree commitment to the athlete, and we're focused on competitive excellence, world and Olympic team berths. We're focused on career transition, so giving our athletes an opportunity while they're training to get job skills, whether it's working in we're out here in Silicon Valley, so working with tech companies, working with local businesses to give you that work experience. So a lot of athletes, when they come in, they're so focused on their sport that they do it for X number of years, and then afterwards, like, okay, start from zero. So, if you start training at 22, 23 years old, and then you go 2 Olympic cycles, and then you get done, you haven't really developed a ton of skills outside of the sport. So that makes it a challenge for a lot of our athletes that are going through the RTC system to be able to, start their life. Starting your life at 30, at a entry-level position may not be the best thing. It may not be an easy thing to accomplish. So we have our athletes on a track to gain valuable skills, to build their resume, to build their competitive or personal and professional development. And that's going to be a big help when they're out of sport. And then the third piece is community, giving back to the wrestling community, whether it's you go and you make it big and you're giving back to the RTC as a donor. We have Beat the Streets Bay Area that we're going to partner with out here to help, with their causes, getting in with local camps and clinics to help the local wrestling community. So really having that three-pronged approach to success and development overall. So with that being said, the tie to Stanford, that's a big boost because a lot of the Stanford supporters are going to be engaged in helping, but it's an independent thing because we can still accomplish all of those goals and, make sure we can have an impact and really make a difference in the lives of those that we're working with, independent of having any affiliation with a college program. So the idea of being tied to Stanford is a big part of it, big draw, but it's not the only thing that the RTC is going on. And, we're going to continue to build and grow. And, for the future ahead, we want to be on pace to be one of the top destinations for international and world level competition.
Yeah, I was going to say, you hit on it a lot, but I mean, what is the main pitch for an athlete to join your RTC? You know what I mean? Is it to be out in California? Like you said, the Silicon Valley thing, I didn't even think about, and future, that's a cool area to be in. And if you really want to get into that sort of thing, it's just, it's different than a lot of the other RTCs. Yeah.
So I don't want to show my hand too much, but I mean, if I could right now, I'd walk you outside and just let you take a look at what it looks like right now at 8:30 in the morning. But yeah, I mean, coming to California, being in the sunshine, that's a big draw. But really, just the commitment. I mean, I've had a little bit of success in the sport, and I think that being a full-time coach and executive director really gives me that we were talking about before with our family, but having that creative control with the organization. So not being tied to a college program, being independent of a college program gives that flexibility for me to build out the program, the structure, the way that really is going to be focused 100% on these elite athletes and their world and Olympic aspirations. So, there's a handful of programs in the country that have dedicated full-time coaches and, even less that have dedicated executive directors. So, that's a big draw that the athletes can take confidence in knowing that, you've got a main point of contact that's going to be making the decisions and collaborating with the athletes to help them reach their goals. We have some other cool stuff that, on the sports performance side, obviously in the Silicon Valley, there's a lot of tech, there's a lot of research, there's a lot of development. So we've got a couple of agreements with some organizations that do the sports testing, sports performance that are really next level. So if you think about it, if there's a machine out there, for anything, but really we're talking about sports performance, right? So there's a testing machine that's going to help optimize your performance or manage what you've got going on, whether it's muscle strength, joint strength, body scans, a lot of those things, right? So there's somebody, working in a garage down in Menlo Park on this sports performance machine. Is like, hey, I want to get it. So there's this organization that we're working with that has access to all of these type of deals. These tech CEOs want to get their product in this organization because they're having these CEOs and big time people that are coming in for their bi-monthly wellness checks and lifestyle plans and really monitoring and testing where they're going. So now this tech guy says, all right, here, let me throw this machine in so you can test it on these high level, high ambitious people. And, you get the immediate feedback, you get to monitor them. And that's something that we can do with our athletes to be able to get this, kind of specific, I don't want to say boutique because that might makes it a little bit softer than it is, but really get that specialized, review and monitoring of their physiological things, their health and wellness benefits. And that's just something where, you're not going to find that too many other places. And, there's, for example, the facility has an altitude chamber in it where you can go and you can raise the elevation, 14,000 feet. So you can just walk on a treadmill at regular pace, but you can put it in like you're walking, on a mountain, so that can get your oxygen up and get that. And so those are the type of things that we have. And you're not going to find that too many other places.
Are you going to see people wrestling robots soon out there?
Yeah, that might be it. That might be it. So, but it's just, it's limitless what the thing can happen in the Silicon Valley. So just to be here and be right on it. I mean, even when I was here before as the head coach at Stanford, there were some of the prototypes that we were able to kind of test in our wrestling room that I come back, 12 years later and I see that they're mainstream. And it was just like, yeah, we had kind of the first crack at it. So that's a big benefit that our athletes will be able to be on the literal cutting edge of technology when it comes to sports performance opportunities.
And how has it changed out there since you were there 10 years ago? Have you noticed a lot of change out that way?
Well, the property values have definitely gone up. So that's really the biggest change. On and around campus, they've done a lot of construction, a lot of development in the area. The area is pretty much the same. Just really, really great to be around. Nice neighborhoods. People are walking, they wave, they're working out. So the area generally, I think, has been, it's relatively the same compared to when I was out here. But I think just the development and the growth in some of the business and some of the technologies are really what makes this place really, really incredible to be.
No, and look, somebody like Jason's a tech nerd. He hears something like Silicon Valley, he's going to get excited about it. An idiot like me is going to get excited for a whole nother reason. And who knows, how you can use that as a resource to appeal people to come out that way. I'm excited to see it. I like to cite my source the best I can. I want to say it was a news outlet in Happy Valley, Center Daily Times, maybe.
Okay, yeah.
About a year ago, did a story on you that said Coach McCoy is going to be putting coaching on the back burner for the time being. How rejuvenated do you feel after only a year off, jumping right back into it and having a project this big?
Yeah, and it was, in the article really focused on the college coaching, and I think that was the big shift. Through this year, I still did some individual training, some private lessons. I did camps and clinics. I did a lot of, so I'm always going to be tied to the sport of wrestling. I think that my head's too big with all this wrestling stuff in it, so I can't just go away. So, but not having the day-to-day, with the inside the college wrestling room, the recruiting, the fundraising on that capacity, that was really the big thing to step away from. So now this is a different form where, and it's going to sound funny, but I don't have as much limit on me. As far as I get to work with young people, junior UWW junior age group, cadets, juniors that are trying to make international teams, the veterans team, people that are outside of the senior level that are competing for the Veterans World Championship and spots there, and then obviously the senior level competition. So my range is a lot more in this position. The recruiting where we recruit regional training center athletes. We'll be hiring coaches and staff. So that piece of it, but it's a little bit different. It's not a situation where I've got dead periods. I've got contact issues. Just like, hey, if I'm interested in somebody, I give them a call and see what happens. So that's a nice transition. And then the training. I mean, the philosophy for RTC athlete. The competition isn't every weekend, and it's you get 4 or 5 set plans a year. You got a few training camps you go to. You're bringing people in, you're bringing people out. So you really have that flexibility to to change it up and have a lot of diversity in the overall experience. So that's really exciting, and just being able to be tagged with a program that I have some familiarity with, but really just when you walk around Stanford's campus and you see the level of excellence that isn't just on the athletic fields, but just in general. And then you're walking around the community, like I said, the Silicon Valley, and seeing all the great things that are happening around. Just being around that high level of existence is really what's exciting to me. And I'm not going to lie, being out here and not having to worry about mosquitoes is a big part of it too. So yeah, that definitely plays into it. So yeah, I'm excited.
So Mac and Kerry did a clinic or ran a practice for the Vipers this year, and it was great. 2 stories from that. One, he walks in and we have this kid named Ezra, and immediately Kerry's like, "Oh, hey, Ezra," and just like he's the kid that you kind of would remember him. I guess you remember from his camp. And
for the right reasons or the wrong reasons?
Oh, what do you think? Hey, Ezra. We're like, why does Ezra know Kerry McCoy? And then little Wildy is in there, and he's like, My dad says you won a tournament. And it's like, yeah, I've won some tournaments.
Yeah. That was a great time, and just being able to give back and, having that opportunity again, like with college coaching, you have less opportunity to do those things because you're just so busy. So the opportunity to get out with the kids club and spend a couple hours there, and still doing camps and clinics, so you're able to connect with a much broader audience. And it was awesome to be able to get in that room, and I was looking forward to getting back again. So, next opportunity I get there back on the East Coast, I'm definitely going to see if I can get back in there and have some fun with those guys.
Oh, that's
it was great.
No, definitely. I mean, went out of your way to be connected with the Maryland wrestling community, for sure. We all appreciate that. Is there anybody out, at the RTC right now? There's a couple of questions as far as coaching that I had. One, is there anybody that we should keep an eye on that's at your training center, or anybody that might be I guess you probably couldn't say that they're looking to possibly relocate yet until it's official, but anybody you think we should be keeping an eye on as wrestling fans?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the guys that are on the team. I mean, we had a couple guys that were world team members. Obviously NCAA caliber guys. We hope to be making an announcement in the next few days with some guys coming out. So keep eyes open for that. So I guess the people I can talk about. So Danny Chade, he wrestled at North Carolina. He's in the RTC right now. He finished third at the U.S. Open a couple years ago. Won the Veterans Nationals. Actually won the Veterans Nationals with his dad. So they're the first father and son combo to win the Veterans Nationals. And then so he's freestyle, men's freestyle. And then Ryan Mango is affiliated with us. Now he's got dual affiliation. Ryan graduated from Stanford. He wrestles for WCAT. He's a Greco wrestler, 2-time world team member. And so he'll be affiliated with us. Obviously, he's got responsibilities with the military, but he'll be out here a good bit. And then, the big splash that happened last year, Adeline Gray, the 5-time world champion, she signed with the RTC last year. And, we're looking to make sure that we can continue to grow women's wrestling in the area and all around. So we're trying to solidify what the plan is for all of them. And then, the college wrestlers that are in the program will be a big part of it. And then some of the local junior age and some of those, and some of the senior, our board president's name is Will Anderson. And he was on the Veterans World team, made the semifinals of the Veterans World Championship. So he's one of the competitive athletes. So, there's a lot of talent in the organization, and, we're going to continue to grow and continue to build. And like I said, if we get these couple of guys that we're thinking about now to once that gets solidified, people are going to be turning their heads pretty quick about what we got going on here.
That's awesome. Can't wait for it. It's now I do a lot of these things off of memory, so absolutely correct me if I'm wrong. It's pretty good most of the time, but you were involved on the coaching staff. Was it 2008 on the Olympic team, and then a couple of world teams in there as well? Is that correct? How would you say like coaching an RTC is different from coaching a world team? Because I guess at the end of the day, they both have the same goal, right? Be a world or Olympic champion, but probably a little bit more developmental and still very talented, but still at the developmental stages. Would you compare and contrast coaching those two different teams?
Yeah. So with the RTC, you have the hands-on day-to-day, planning, execution, you have all those things, sports performance, strength conditioning, having to build that team, build that plan that, to get the guys on the world team. Once they're on the world team, there's a little bit of a handoff to the national team coaches, and then the national team coaches kind of plan all that, and you're more of a supplement. So being on the world team, you got, depending on the year, right, 6 to 10 athletes that are coming from different places that you're trying to put into one system. Now, the great thing about the where things are going with USA Wrestling now is the system is pretty consistent across. So Bill Zadek, Kevin Jackson, Joe Russell, they're the national team coaches for freestyle, and they'll make sure they engage the RTC coaches periodically. At least I'd say once a month, there's some kind of communication to make sure that these are specific things that Team USA needs to be working on. So in the time before the world team, before the training goes on, you really focus on those day-to-day, specific touch points for that athlete under the umbrella of what's best for Team USA and what you need to be best in the world. The RTC focus is obviously it's world and Olympic teams to focus on, but you really got to have a little bit of that split focus. You got to make the team. And then once you're on the world team, it's focused on beating the Russians, beating the Iranians, beating the Turks, beating the foreign athletes. So the shift it's a slight shift because obviously you're going to focus on those international competitions throughout your cycle, but you also have to be focused on the American competition as well. So you kind of have that dual focus, dual shift, and making sure that the lifestyle is correct. By the time they make a world team, you would hope that everything is in place and they have that structure and just kind of fine tuning and polishing what they've been working on throughout. So I think the RTC structure really gives you that fundamental foundational preparation. And then when you're in a world team coach, you're in that fine tuning, 6-8 week cycle of let's go and let's cap off all the work that you've been doing all these months. But really, the work is kind of done. Let's fine tune it.
Now, do you think these RTCs are kind of changing the game? Because I remember when you were competing, when I was first watching wrestling, it was Sun-Kissed Kids. It was I think you were part of NYAC. Is that correct?
Yep.
And Dave Schultz Wrestling Club for a while there. I think Gator Wrestling Club, like really. It was like I felt like they came overnight. Like I remember, was it Kerry Bowman's that was the U.S. national champ in 2000? Like he was part of it. I was like, well, that's a cool sounding name. And then there's several more people that were a part of it for about 5 or 6 years. But now it seems like that's shifted to all RTC. Do you think that's for the betterment of building wrestling throughout the country and developing USA Wrestling?
Yeah, of course. So, and a lot of people think about the RTC model as something new. The way that it exists now is an enhancement, but when we were coming up, they had RTCs, but they weren't called RTCs. They really function on the Olympic sport or the local sports club with the Olympic waiver kind of. That was the process that a lot of these organizations were functioning on. But like you say, back in the day when guys would train at Oklahoma State or train at Arizona State or train in in Iowa, like they would train there and they didn't have the same label as an RTC, but in essence that's what it was, because you had all these guys training there and they would go to Colorado Springs for a national team camp, or they bring a person from here, a person from there. So when I was at Penn State, when I was training, I used to go down to Lehigh and I trained there. Greg Stroll was the head coach and Joel Sherritt was an assistant at Lehigh, and we used to go there and train, and he'd come up to State College and we'd work out. And then I'd go to West Virginia. Dominic Black's one of my best friends and best training partners. He was down in Morgantown and we trained, and he'd come up to State College. And even when I went to Lehigh, I had that same system. So being able to go, when I was younger, I'd go out to Edinburgh, train with Bruce and Kurt Angle back in the day, would be up there. And so you kind of had that structure of, hey, let's go where the best people are and bring the best people in to train. So that's really what it was. But then when the RTC came in to formalize it and make it an actual thing, to allow a little bit more flexibility in where you're going to go and where you're going to train and how you're going to train. And the biggest thing I'd say is that the RTC system has put a lot more money in the sport, giving athletes a chance to be able to train and compete at a high level and have a little more financial stability, where most of us back in the day, you were either a volunteer assistant coach, and heck, you look at a guy like Bruce Baumgartner, who was a head coach and training and crushing people as a head coach, with that. And some people are working 40 hours a week, making World Olympic teams, working 40 hours a week. So the idea now that you're able to, have that focus on, majority training, be compensated at a high level and still be able to reach your goals, I think that's a huge thing for the sport. I think is a huge thing for wrestling in our country. So I'd say that's a benefit. Right now where you see is the gray area between the RTCs and the college programs. We have to make sure that stays separate, because I think a lot of RTCs are pushing the limit on what the NCAA rules are and what the limitations are as far as how they can function. So as long as that stays under control, I think the RTCs are a great thing for the sport and for wrestling as a whole. Again, like you said, you have a wide variety, a broad spectrum where you can help with the RTCs, and that's the big key to make sure, if you get someone that's in RTC system from, say, sophomore, junior in high school, they go through, if they end up going to college that's tied to an RTC system, and they come to the post-collegiate and an RTC system, and you can have an athlete for 8 or 10 years that are in that system, and they're making world teams at every level. That's really, so you have a consistent coach, a consistent system for 8 or 10 years. That's going to really make a benefit on your progress, both athletically and personally.
That's on. Now, you mentioned Bruce Baumgartner. I just want to detour for a second. It just made something in my brain flash, which is always dangerous. So how would those workouts go? Because I recall when I was growing up and I'd go to camps and he'd be a guest clinician, he would show a move and he would always, I wouldn't say always, that's not correct, but more than once I heard him say, ask Kerry McCoy how well this move works. I'm very curious on how a workout like that would go because I'm not trying to start things. He's kind of running his mouth a little bit.
Well, he definitely has a right to run his mouth. So I trained with him for a good bit, and I was his training partner in 95 and 96 for the World Championships and the Olympics. So we got really close during those times. And I was, the up and comer. I was the old weight classes. It was 220, 100 kilos. And so he was a heavyweight. So I weighed anywhere between, through our time, I weighed anywhere between 215 and 225, 230. So, he was up 275, 280. So, there was a little bit of a difference in weight and size. And, I'd give him all I could. And, sometimes it didn't necessarily go my way. But so what we had to do is I had to evolve our training. I said, listen, this is not really helping you, and it's definitely not helping me. So when we wrestle live, it was like, okay, you're not allowed to gut wrench me, and you're not allowed to double leg me. And that was the only ways that I had opportunities to make it competitive. And because he'd shoot the double and he'd just kind of reel you in and take it, lock up gut wrench, gut, and it was over. So I had to negotiate with him to give myself a chance to make it a competitive match. But yeah, he was awesome. I mean, and the thing that, one of the biggest things that I learned from him were, like those things where, ask Kerry McCoy how this works, because he would do these things, but he would come back and he would explain, like, this is what's happening. This is why, this is working. This is what you have to do. And so every time, no matter how bad the beating was, I always got a lesson and I always got an opportunity to improve. So majority of the stuff didn't necessarily help me when I was wrestling him because he was such a high level, but those are things that later in my career were able to stick. So yeah, he was awesome and all the way around, as a mentor, as a person that I look up to, and I'm very fortunate to have had that time with him. And, but yeah, there were some rough, I can't even call them battles because they were so one-sided that, but it were, we got after it and I got better from being able to work with him.
So Bruce Baumgartner is a bully that picks on smaller people. Sorry, I need a sound bite. For all these previews that we do. So I always try to twist words around the best that I can. We'll cut it off before that point. So that those must have been some real excitement. And I remember when I first started wrestling, the first NCAA championships that I remember watching on TV. Now my exposure was a rec level, Howard County kid, and at that point it was Western Howard County. I turned on the TV and I just remember thinking, well, that's not what heavyweights look like. And I think it was when Stephen Neal wrestling in the finals there. Can you talk about that a little bit and just like your rivalry with Stephen Neal or just, what it was like wrestling on some of those teams in Penn State while you were there?
Yeah. So it's actually ironic. I was talking to someone about Steve. Steve is such an awesome guy. And the person I was talking about was just commenting about how, when he competed, he had like his competition, he had to hate his competition and, he didn't want anything good to befall him whatsoever. And I said, that's never the way that it was. And, there were some people that you didn't necessarily like competing against, but, and I feel like Steven is a great example of that connection of having a positive relationship with your competition, because so we wrestled 11 times in our career. And the first 3 times I beat him, and then he beat me the 4th time, and then the 5th and 6th time we split, and then 7 and 8 I won 7 and 8, and then 9, 10, and 11 we split. So I think it was 7 and 4 is my record. And we wrestled in the NCAA finals my senior year, and what I say is like the one example. So after that finals. His family, ironic enough, his dad went to the University of Maryland, so we ended up having that in common later on. But his family and his dad was a basketball player, so I used to bust his chops like, man, why don't you go play basketball like your dad? That'd make my life a lot easier. And so after the finals, and it was in northern Iowa, that night, his family and my family we hung out in the, the hotel lobby for a couple of hours, just hanging out. And, he's a sophomore, so but I just beat him in the NCAA finals. His parents and my family were just hanging out like we're best friends. So that was something that was, we knew back then, and we had competed and known each other through the last few years, but that was something that always sticks out with me. And then a few years later, I was at Lehigh coaching, and there was my wife now, my girlfriend at the time. She had a friend that was a huge New England Patriots fan, and I just reached out to Steve and said, hey, my girlfriend's friend has a big affinity for New England. What do you got anything you can do? And I sent her their address without any expectation. He sent like a package of goods. I don't even know what was in there, but the person got in touch with my wife now and said, oh, thank you. It was so awesome for him to do this. So I think he just filled it with memorabilia, autograph stuff, and just out of, on a whim, hey, Steve, can you do this? And then when I was coaching at Maryland, we had went up to New England to compete, and I reached out to him and said, hey, I got the team, we want to go by the Patriots Stadium. And, he's like, oh, yeah. And so the funny thing is we were texting, and he would take forever to get back to me on the text. And I was just like, all right, what's going on? But we ended up getting together, and he came out to meet our team at the facility, and, we got to hang out a little bit. But he comes in, and he's like bundled up, he's all covered, and he's like, and I'm like, what's going on? He's like, oh man, I'm so sick right now. I'm dying. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I wanted to come out, and he's like, so he kept his distance. He doesn't want to get anybody sick, but he came out deathly ill, came out to meet our team, at the facility, and he had the old like Nokia candy bar phone, with the T9 texting. So when he was texting, that's why I said it took so long, because he had to like A, B, C, So I was just like, oh man, I should have just called you, but no complaints. And so that's the type of person that he is, considering that we had that rivalry through our competitive career that went through high school and international. And so it's just like a person like that has just shown that, you can be competitive against someone. You can go out there and try to battle and rip each other's heads off on the mat, but off the mat, you don't have to be a jerk or something. So I'm really excited that we have that relationship, and through the years, they have that NCAA final. So we wrestled early in the year, our team, and my coaches were great at making sure our athletes, the guys on the team, were in a position to be successful. So right around Christmas, again, talking about it earlier about, coming out to California, right around Thanksgiving or Christmas, our team came out west, and we wrestled Fresno and Bakersfield, and we did the deal, went up to San Francisco. We went to, we went to LA, Hollywood. So we did all that stuff on this big trip. But one of the main reasons were to get me out here to get a chance to wrestle Steven earlier. So we wrestled at the beginning of the year, and I beat him in the duel, and then he ended up coming back in the NCAA finals. And we had an opportunity to wrestle in the All-Star match, but it was, Big Ten schedule. We had like 4 matches in a stretch of a week and a half, and the All-Star match was going to be on a Monday night, so it was going to be like match on Thursday, match on Sunday, or match on Friday, match on Sunday, All-Star match on Monday, match on Friday. So my coaches said, no, this is an opportunity. We're going to pass on the All-Star match this year and just focus on getting the team and staying healthy. And so we end up wrestling in the NCAA finals, and it was the first time I wrestled him, I think I got a takedown. I rode him out, and got escape. I think it was 4-0. So in the NCAA finals, I was pretty good on top and keeping them down, and I was riding them pretty good. But they made an adjustment, because one of the things for my mat returns, I didn't like to lift. I like to just kind of collapse the hip and catch it. And they worked on it. So when I was collapsing the hip, he Granbied, and in a scramble situation, he Granbied, and we were in a flurry, and he got a reversal and almost caught me on my back. I mean, it was literally like the ref was like 1.5, and I got off my back, and then I had to come back and get the escape, and I ended up winning on a stall call. Which was, that's not necessarily the way you want to win, but it was one of the things. So yeah, that was a big battle for my second undefeated season. And, he went on to win two championships and battled. He beat me. I was on the world team in 98, and, had a tough situation where they overturned the semifinals, and then he came and made the world team in 99, knocked me off, won the world championship. And then in 2000, I had to wrestle for the Olympic spot. So we, that rivalry just continued to get heated through there. But ever since then and up until today, we he got inducted to the Hall of Fame a couple years ago, and with some other people, but I was out there for this Hall of Fame induction. So we have a great relationship, and another reason why I'm excited about being back in California, so we can continue to connect and continue to build the wrestling community strong. So might have gave a little bit too much information on that question, but
no, absolutely. This is what we're here for. There was part of that where I sat back and I just said to myself, this is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
Like hearing a story like that, like, because a lot of those matches, and you're talking about like the back exposure in the NCAA finals. I probably had forgotten about that since I saw it, over 20 years ago. My memory from that match is, I think it was that one, is you running up in the stands, and I just have a picture of you hugging your mom, like right after the match. I just remember being, that is a huge guy. Now, like, I was actually Matt side in 2000 in Vegas at the U.S. Nationals, and that's where you, I think you beat him again in 2001. But came out guns a-blazing, took him out right away. I think it was a gut or a leg lace, like almost immediately off the break. At that point, he's the defending world champion. This is going to seem like a weird question. A couple of years ago, for whatever reason, it's probably maybe longer than that, I Google stupid things. I Googled Stephen Newton's net worth, and it said between $1 and $5 million. And, from his time playing in the NFL eventually.
Yep.
Has he ever thanked you for knocking him off? Because you think, like, he may not be a millionaire if he maybe he would, but he may not be a millionaire if you didn't beat him in 2000 and 2001 for the World and Olympic spot.
Yeah. I used to always joke about that. So, yeah, he definitely owes me a percentage, because if it weren't for me, he might have kept wrestling. But he did, and I've seen him in interviews where he's definitely mentioned that before, saying, if it weren't for Kerry, I might have continued to wrestle, maybe not played football. But yeah, so I always bust his chops when I see him, like, hey, where's that check at, bud?
No, and it was fun. Like, I just remember I was sitting Matt's side that year. My coach at the time had got, surprised me with tickets. Matt's side, so we were sitting there together, and we were betting on, first match he would pick the guy, second match I would pick the guy. I had Neil, so if you could pay me $20 after you get that cut, I would appreciate it. I'm 20 in the hole after that one.
There you go.
But no, there was just some awesome memories of you competing. You talked about it about 98 and representing the world team in 98. Fact or fiction, you won the match on the mat. The story that I heard was that somebody actually came to your hotel room to let you know that they overturned it. Wasn't even in the arena or at the venue. You're back at the hotel preparing for the finals. Is that true?
Yeah. So the way it worked back then was, they had a certain amount of time after the match to file a protest. So, and I was telling someone this the other day, so it's Alexis Rodriguez, he's just, again, another great guy. We have a great relationship off the mat, but we had some intense battles. We wrestled about 7 times, and the only times that I lost to him, which isn't a great stat, but I lost to him at the World Championships that year in the semis, which I won, but it got overturned, and then in 2001 for the bronze. So I beat him at the Pan Am Games. I beat him at the Pan Am Championships. I beat him at the World Cup. I beat him we had an event called the Titan Games. So I kind of had, I had a lot of success against him. And his claim to fame before that, so he was 17, 18 years old, and he beat Bruce Baumgartner in the World Cup. Bruce's last kind of his farewell competition. And, he came back that year. He was second in the world, and then 98. So he was a returning silver medalist in 98. So when we wrestled that match, I won, and, it was a close match. We were going back, celebrating, not celebrate, but focused on getting ready for the World Championships and for the finals. And we were sitting in a room, and I was sitting in a room with Lincoln McElravy and Les Gutches, and, just talking, just BS, right? Just nothing, and Bruce Burnett comes in, and he stands in the doorway of the hotel room, and he walks in, and if you know Bruce does a pretty good job of keeping his emotions in check, and you get to see this look on his face, and he stands in the doorway, and he looks at me, and then just drops his head, and I'm like, what's up, and he goes, and he's shaking his head. He's like, I don't know what to say. I'm like, what? Just what's up? And he's like, they protested and they overturned it. And I was like, all right, I guess I got to come back and get third. And that was literally the reaction they had. And those guys are looking, they were like, yeah, got to get third because, we didn't want to be in that situation where we're the pity party because I had to focus and I actually had to wrestle a match in the Conti semi. So this is old bracketing where, they had a straight line bracket and I had to wrestle a match in the Conti semis to get a chance to wrestle bronze. So, so I had to be refocused and, those guys, Lincoln and Lester, like, hey man, let's get after it. So it was one of those things where I didn't really have a chance to process really what happened because I had to be focused on going out and I ended up winning. I had to wrestle Turkey in the Conti semis and I beat him. And then I had to wrestle Russia for the bronze, who I beat earlier in the competition. I think second round I beat the Russian, who had beat me early in the year at the Goodwill Games. So, it was kind of the rubber match with that guy. So, and, in the tournament, I had a close match with him, and for the bronze, he kind of busted open. I think he won like 3 or 4-0. So, and then after that, I remember, getting back to the hotel room, and then it just hit me, like, okay, what happened? I was able to process it, but then, after some tears in the shower, and it's like, okay, well, this is my first world team. I was, 23, 24 years old. I said, I'm gonna make a bunch of world teams. I'm gonna have more opportunities to do this. So, it was kind of that bounce back. But yeah, it was, to this day, I look back and I think about it. And obviously, everything happens for a reason. I trust that God has a plan for us all, and this is something that helped me to, if that didn't happen, I don't know where I'd be today. But it was definitely one of those hard things to swallow. And one of the other thing that did in the last few months was, going back. I have a lot of my competition matches on VHS. So the last year, I've been transferring a lot of those, if not all of them, over to digital and uploading them to a YouTube page. And probably 2 weeks ago, I came across the 98 World Championships, and and I watched the match again in its entirety. And I hadn't watched it in 15, 20 so years or whatever, but I remember watching it again. I was like, man, talk about rip the Band-Aid off, but But then also the other thing that I had in the 99 World Cup, we wrestled Cuba. So after the World Championships, I came back in 99 and I wrestled Cuba and I beat him again at the World Cup. So it was like, it didn't make it better because Rodriguez won the World Championship that year. It didn't necessarily make it better, but it still felt good that I know in my heart, and most people know that I was a better wrestler. It just wasn't meant to be to win a world title that year. So it was it's definitely a tough situation, but I believe that it happened for a reason, and it helped me to be who I am today.
It's just a couple of more things on that. Now I'll keep it super short because even though you're in California, I think you could probably jog here and beat me up. So I don't want to get you too angry at me bringing up bad news with it. But now that match, the part that they overturned, you were actually on top, right? And like you had gotten exposure. Is that like?
Yeah. So I had an ankle ace. And so Rodriguez had really strong hips. So, you weren't doing a whole lot. It was hard to gut wrench hard. So the technique, we got an ankle ace and I stood up to my feet and, using the momentum, I kind of back arched from my feet to get the turn. And when they protested and they looked at it, they said that he reached down, he grabbed my ankle and he kicked me from being ankle ace. He kicked me to my back instead of me arching back. He kicked me to my back, and they gave him 3 points on the on his counter, my ankle ace.
Man, that's terrible. Now you said that you're uploading these to YouTube. What's the channel that people could check that out? Do you know it off the top of your head?
Yeah, well, I do. It's a long. So I'm not. I used to be a little bit more tech savvy than I am now. So basically, if you link it, if you go to YouTube and you just search Kerry McCoy, it's I don't know, a page and a half down. My website. CarryTheRealMcCoy.com has a link to it, so you can go there and just click on video. Apologize, the website's a little bit outdated. I've updated it, but I haven't uploaded the new updates. So, but if CarryMcCoy.com/video, and you can get to it. And I've been a little lax the last few weeks with everything going on uploading, but there's a good number of content from high school, a couple high school matches, a lot of college matches, and a few international matches, and that's one of the things in this next couple of days I want to try to upload those matches with Rodriguez, and I got some battles with Stephen Neal and Tommy Rowlands, and some of those World Team Trials events. So I want to get those up there, and just mainly, so when people hear these stories, they don't think they're all made up. You can actually see that it's actually true.
Yeah, we'll post when we post upload the podcast, we'll post the links and stuff in there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if none of your friends out in Silicon Valley are willing to update your website for you and make it a little bit more modern, Jason's a huge nerd.
I'll do it.
He wore a Star Wars shirt last episode, for God's sakes. You know, he's
Well, I rocked my Maryland shirt today.
Nice.
In my Under Armour gear, so I'm going full Maryland.
There you go. All good.
Well, so you mentioned McElravy a little bit there. You and him have a long history. You guys were on the junior world team, the Olympic. Were you guys on cadet as well? You were on 3 different world teams together and 3 different age groups. What were some of those experiences like?
Yeah, so it and ironically, so the 2 people that I shared those experiences, so Lincoln McElravy and then Brandon Slay were both on. We were on the cadet world, junior world, and Olympic team together. So pretty good company to spend those years with. So I met Lincoln in 1990, getting ready for the cadet worlds, and Philip, South Dakota, just a Midwest rural American guy, and we hit it off. And through the years, we came back, and he decided to go to Iowa, and I was going to Penn State on the junior world team. And I remember sitting in the hotel room, and I'm like, yeah, we're gonna get you. We're gonna get you. We're gonna beat you. And he just kind of had that smile and was like, okay. There was no argument, no discussion. He just kind of said, okay, we'll see. And we came close. So freshman year, so he started off redshirting his freshman year. We had to do it. We had Iowa at home, and we were ranked 1 and 2 in the country, and we wrestled them, and we ended up tying them that freshman year. Colott wrestled Bill Zadek and caught him with a high-flying cement job and pinned him, and then Troy Steiner and Troy Sunderland wrestled, and Troy Sunderland beat him. It was just like a back-and-forth duel, and it came down at 190 was my freshman year weight. I wrestled Joel Sherritt, and he was on his way to a major decision, and I got a takedown right at the end of the match to save the major. He was up by 6 going for the takedown to get the major, and I got the takedown countered, and then our heavyweight lost. So we tied this is back when you could do ties in duels. So we tied them in the duel. They went to the national duels. They got upset by Nebraska in the semis, so we wrestled Nebraska in the national duel finals and beat Nebraska. So they took third. We were national dual meet champs. Went to Big Tens. We lost in the Big Tens by 3.5 or 4 points, and it was like, I think we had 5 in the finals. They had 5 in the finals. We were head to head. I think we were head to head 4 or 5 of those matches, and we lost a couple of them. So and this was, I think they were going for their 20th straight Big Ten championship that year. I made the semifinals of Big Tens, and I ended up doing the semi slide. I lost 3 straight, and ended up taking 6th. And our heavyweight Greg Troxel, literally he had passed a kidney stone, so he had kidney stone. He gutted out and made it to I think he made it to semis, and think he had to default out just because he couldn't wrestle anymore. He was in the hospital, passed a kidney stone that night. So if he or I had won one more match, we could have won the Big Tens that year. But then we go to NCAAs, and we lost by 2.5 points. And one of the most controversial things, again, Troy Steiner and Troy Sunderland are in the finals. I'm sorry, Terry Steiner, not Troy Steiner. Terry Steiner, and they're in the NCAA finals, and Troy's up. He's up with 10 seconds left. Steiner's in on his legs, kind of, Troy's in a front headlock position, and the buzzer, so we're in Ames, Iowa. The buzzer sounds, and they're in a neutral position, but after the buzzer, Terry keeps wrestling, right? Drives into Troy, and the referees come back, and Gable stands up on the stage, and he's yelling, two, right? And the referees conference about it, and they come back and they give him the takedown. And so that's an 8-point swing, and we end up losing the team title by 2.5 points. So if we win that match, Penn State's the national champs back then. And, so we were close to beating them that year. And then every year after that, it wasn't as close. So I always go back to Lincoln. It's like, yeah, we had our chance, but that's, remember, they pulled Lincoln out of red shirt and he won the national championship. So if they don't pull Lincoln out of red shirt, things may be different. So yeah, it was a start of a great, a continuation of a great friendship that went into some rivalries in college, and then, making world teams together. He was on that 98 team with me. He was on the 99 team. So he was on 97, 98, 99, and then 2000. So we continued our relationship through the years. I've been to his house, did some camps and clinics in his area. Even to this day, we stay well connected, and, his family is awesome. And, just to have that relationship, have that foundation of over, 30 years of a connection. It's funny now, his kids play basketball. So it's like, so I went to his house a couple of months ago. I was over his house, and pretty late, and he was watching basketball on TV. The whole family was downstairs watching like Golden State play, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm a big Steph Curry fan." I'm like, "Who are you?" Like, Blakey McCoy is watching basketball and with his family, and he actually knows what's going on. But it's great relationship with him, and I'm excited to continue that relationship into post athletic life.
No, and it's kind of funny how you and McElravy, how your careers, how similar they are too. If you follow it up, from you guys winning national titles both as sophomores in '94, and again, correct me on any of this. '95, it was the same year that where he had Marionetti in the finals and was upset. You were the 1 seed, undefeated, defending national champion. The name slips my mind. It wasn't Tully Thompson. He won it, but the Northern Iowa kid,
Justin Greenlee.
Greenlee, right? You guys met in the semis. Both took an Olympic red shirt in '96, correct? And then
regular red shirt. Yeah, we just did regular red shirt because we both wrestled as true freshmen. Yep.
Gotcha. And then both come back to win it as seniors. I've heard you say in the past about you guys having to kind of lend shoulders to one another in that '95 year. I feel like I'm bringing up nothing but the bad stuff.
Just
Thank God you're smiling. Yeah, it's but that I've heard you say in previous interviews before that walking back after your semis match, he was one of the first people that you saw, and him after the finals coming back, you were one of the first people that he saw. Can you talk about that? And you can be as brief as you want if it's if it's bringing up bad news.
No. Again, everything happens for a reason, and it all gets to that point. So in '95. We're going on, 5-6 years of a friendship, and, being able to battle through the years. So, we had a real solid foundation, and, even through the training camps and things like that, we really built a friendship, not just based on wrestling. So when we had the NCAA stuff, so I got beat in the semis, and, it's in Carver Hawkeye Arena. And, what I remember most is words didn't have to be said. He just kind of came up and he, tapped me on the shoulder and was just like, get that mutual respect. So just knew that he was there, and because he still, he had won in the semis, so he was getting ready, had to get ready to go compete. So, but he stayed and was able to watch and was there. And then, after he lost in the finals, you're back getting ready for the award stuff, and I was back there with him. And the one thing, and I'm a little bit of a pack rat, so when it comes to stuff, but there's a picture that was in their local paper, or there was a picture somewhere of he and I standing next to each other, Penn State, Iowa, just shoulder to shoulder in the hallways of Carver Hawkeye Arena. And that's the thing that just is burned in my memory, because, we were big rivalries as teams, but our friendship was so much stronger and so much more meaningful. And just right after that, it was just kind of, that's what said it all. But he was there for me, I was there for him. And then even through the other years when we got to the senior level, like I said, in '98, I was in his room when I got the news about, the overturned match. '99, he lost in the finals to Igali, and, I was there for him. So it was just like being able to be there in those critical situations, to not have it be a wrestling person, not to have it be a on the mat situation, just knowing that you had a true friend that was right there to support you, is what I'm really, really thankful for, and how that's played out. And it's just awesome to be able to have those relationships.
No, I mean, I could talk about your wrestling all day.
Mackin's got a pretty encyclopedic memory, especially for back in that era. I feel like you're just
'90s and early 2000s.
Hey, easy. Don't be like back in that era. Come on now. He's like, he really knows his history.
Now he's actually going to come.
So long ago.
So long ago. Yeah.
One of the things I don't know, you and I actually have a lot in common. We both started wrestling in 7th grade, and that's it. It ends right there. That's all. But I think, people probably don't realize it, but I mean, you come out and you wrestle. I've heard the story before about you jogging. You weren't even on the mat yet, just jogging before practice, and said, "I'm meant for this." Like, this is I'm going to fall in love with this thing.
Yeah.
But less than a decade, or not, no, it might be about a decade later, you're on a world team. Like, that's a lot of ground to cover. What went into that? Like, you know, the second that from that day that you're jogging in the hallway before practice starts to representing the United States on the world team, it's not that long of a timeline. I don't know if people realize how short that is. And, you know, what went into that? How much work did it take? And was that like a year-round thing? You were just addicted to the mat from then on?
Yeah, you know, and I think I started off always with the qualifier that, you know, I was very fortunate. I was very blessed. God put he gave me some natural talents, and but he put the right people around me from the start. I mean, I had our Longwood Kid Wrestling program, the Longwood coaches, the Longwood athletes, families. I mean, I had the right people around me to you know, to give me the guidance, give me the structure, and you know, and I credit God for that, because it's not about just me, right? So I had to have a team, and so all the people that have been around me through my career at every level have made contributions to where I am. So for me, I fell in love with it that first day, and I just said I want to do everything I can to be the best that I can be. So. And you probably heard the story before. I mean, I was so bad when I started, I couldn't help but get better. So anytime someone's saying, hey, you know, there's a practice, or hey, there's a camp, or there's a clinic, you know, somebody's teaching wrestling, I was like, I'm there. Let me get there. And so we went year round, 7th grade. Didn't have one competitive match my first year wrestling, you know, on the junior high team. So just stayed with it, went to practice every day. And then 8th grade, I got a little more experience. 9th grade, I got some more competition. But I was all junior high, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. Wrestled freestyle and Greco year round. You know, 7th grade, I went to the freestyle states in both styles. And, you know, I finished 3rd out of 3 in Greco and 4th out of 4 in freestyle. So it was a stellar performance to get going.
You made the podium by any means necessary.
Yep. And then 8th grade, I had some success in freestyle. You know, again, went to the state tournament and had some matches, went to a regional tournament, you know, had some matches. And then 9th grade is when I started to kind of turn the corner. I was undefeated in the junior high team, and then, you know, went out and qualified for the cadet nationals in freestyle and Greco-Roman nationals, junior nationals in Greco-Roman. So I got those 2 training camps and got to go out there. And I remember the funny thing, with my trip in Greco. So I go out to the nationals. It's out in Cedar Falls at the Unidome, and I remember seeing this guy. So I'm not too worldly at this point. I mean, I'm 9th grade freshman, just been wrestling for 2 years. So I see this guy walking around, big scruffy beard, thick glasses, overalls, like sandals, and I'm like, just ignorance of young people and judging a book by its cover. I'm like, ooh, I hope I get to wrestle him. Well, 2 days later, I'm sitting in the stands, and that scruffy beard guy is in the finals. It was Ray Brinzer. So right. I'm like, you know, completely not knowing, you know, because, you know, that age is so, but yeah, Ray's out there throwing people and winning nationals. And I'm like, I'm sitting in the stands. So, so 9th grade, I went to cadets. I think I was 3-2 at the cadet national in freestyle. In Greco, I think I was 1-2 at the Greco nationals. 10th grade, come back, wrestled my first year in high school varsity. I lost 6 matches, including the first round of our league tournament. That was, you know, leagues, county, states was the process. So I didn't even get a chance to get to my state qualifier. And then that summer, I went to cadet nationals. I took 2nd, and the guy that beat me didn't want to go to the world championships. So I got a chance to go to world championships and end up taking a silver medal at the world championships. So, you know, it just kind of layers on layers. But that world championship team is where I got exposed to Bruce Burnett, who ended up being, you know, my national team coach, Olympic team coach, Lincoln McElravy, Brandon Slay, and a bunch of other great athletes. So that really widened my perspective. I got to train at the Olympic Training Center and got to see Kevin Jackson and Kenny Monday and Bruce Baumgarten and Dave Schultz and all these guys out there. I was like, wow. So I think that was a big part of it, you know, so the foundation that I had from high school and being exposed to that, just year-round wrestling, and then making a couple of those high-level teams where I was able to get out and see the next level, really built that foundation. And then, you know, through the next couple of years, continue to build, made the junior world team as a senior, and then my freshman year made the Pan Am team after the college season was over, and then made the Greco-Roman Espoir world team, which is, you know, UWW now, Espoir back then. And then, you know, continue to build. So then in 98, you know, making that first world team. So yeah, you know, 11 years after starting wrestling, I had made a couple world teams, won a couple national championships, and was on my way to really thinking that I'm going to stick with the sport.
And on your journey, because I don't know how many wrestlers tune into the show, but I know a lot of parents do. And again, the memory that I have, if I picture Kerry McCoy from his competition days, is running up in the stands, hugging his mother. How supportive, how above and beyond did your parents go for you, and how much did it attribute to your success?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I was just talking about this the other day on one of my Bible studies. They were asking where a hero was, and I said, my mom's my hero. And the thing that my mom brought to the table was she was always the same, right? She didn't get overly involved in anything that we did, but she was always 100% supportive. So, I mean, literally I would call her and be like, hey, I'm wrestling the US Open. She's like, oh, that's, good luck, have fun. When you come to visit, and, things like that. But, she was there. They were at the tournaments, the NCAAs. But I think in college, outside of the NCAAs, they might have come to 2 or 3 dual meets. In high school, 2 or 3 dual meets, just, kind of the bigger ones. But she was just there as that constant source of support. But she wasn't over the top. She wasn't, having the expectation that she had for me was be the best that you can be, work as hard as you can work. And, when you do all that, then everything goes. So having that support network from my mom was huge. And then, the wrestling family, wrestling community, that, in high school, the people that were around, they were pseudo parents. My coach was, Mike Bacozzi, was an All-American at Iowa State. He was that guy that would, come pick you up if you needed a ride. He'd drive you to tournaments. He'd do all that. So again, I say God put so many people around me to really help me to be able to do the things that I needed to do. And, so that support structure, which is a little unique, I think, because my mom wasn't, she wasn't over the top. She wasn't, hey, you got to do this, you got to do, I mean, whatever it was, whether it was with my instrument, when I was playing the instrument, whether it was singing in the church choir, whether it was, doing the yard work, she was like, hey, go out, do your best, show up on time, work hard, and, good things will happen. So I never had that pressure. I guess ultimately what I'm getting to is I never had that pressure from my home to do something above and beyond what I would need to do or what I was capable of doing. It was just like, hey, whatever you do it your best, and I'm going to support you. And, the accountability side of it is like, if I didn't practice my instrument, hey, did you practice? No, we'll get in there and practice, right? Not a situation of like, if you don't practice, then you're not going to be this, this, and this, or, just like, hey, do what you're supposed to do. And so I think that's really the biggest thing that I got from my mom through the process.
So she wasn't like a psycho wrestling parent, you know what I mean? So I think that's a lesson for all you psycho wrestling parents out there. Like, chill, be supportive, but don't go over the top, and hey, it'll all work out. Yeah.
No, I promise I'm going to transition to coaching. I'm going to cut myself off here after a couple more questions.
No, we're good.
But I'm just loving this too much. I have to be honest with you, like Jason and I will tell you that we talked about who would our top 5 coaches be to get on the show when we decided to start this thing, a couple of months ago. And I talked about how a couple of mine have been on. Kerry McCoy was my number 1 on my list of 5. So this is amazing for me. I really, really appreciate it. One of them is a fact or fiction. So my coach in high school, who I also came up coaching under, is a guy named Pedro Barbosa. We call him Toke. Was at Hammond High School for about 10 years or so. He was a walk-on at University of Maryland. He told me a story about at the Penn State Open. He had a lot of time on his hands because he wasn't in the bracket very long. But he walked by and was just exploring State College, and you're competing there. And he said he walked by the weight room and saw you powerlifting. Is that true? Like, were you going and getting workouts in at college tournaments? Like, you're competing that day, but man, this is, in my mind, I read it as this is not enough of a workout for me. I can't miss a training session. I'm going to throw some iron around. Is that true?
That might be a little bit of an embellishment. I didn't work out on days of competition, but depending on the timing of it, it might have been, I might have had to get a couple sets in. I was on, depending on the year, especially going through 2000, I was on a pretty strict, lifting program made by Joe Bastardi, who's, Penn State alum and preeminent weatherman in the world. And he had some stuff. And if it was one of those days where I had to get on, I might've got some sets in, but typically I didn't train the day that I had competition, but, it might have been depending on the timing of it when it had going on. I might have been there getting some reps in.
You're kind of ruining it for me, Coach. I shouldn't have asked.
Fact or fiction?
Yeah. Oh, God.
I cannot neither confirm or deny that story. How about that?
Just a couple more. One of them is how do you think Kerry McCoy, the competitor, is going to be remembered? Like my memory is, my ignorance. Everything in New York is close to one another. But the hometown kid in 2002, making the World Finals. I think it was 2002.
2003.
2003. I apologize. 2002 was the year we didn't go, right? We sat out. But 2003, how do you see yourself being remembered? How do you think the competitor is going to be remembered, looking back?
Yeah, that's good. I think, hopefully it's someone that wrestled as hard as he could when he was on the mat and was a nice guy off the mat. I think that's really what it comes down to. I don't think that you have to be a jerk when you're a high level competitor. But I think just being able to know that I would hope that anybody that saw me compete would know that I was giving everything that I had, win, lose, or draw. And, after the match, if I had to come off and, if there was somebody there that wanted to have a conversation, now I admit that sometimes after a tough loss, I may not have been the first person to grant an interview or sign an autograph, but typically I think I was able to be a gracious winner and a gracious loser. But someone that competed at a high level and gave everything they had on the mat. So I hope that that's what people would see with it.
And one last one. What's your greatest competition memory? If you could pick one, if there's one thing that sits with you that's most sentimental value, what's your favorite one? So
I get this question often, and I can pick one, but it really wouldn't be fair because the one that I would pick it's so significant, but it's insignificant when you look at the bigger picture. So I'll give you three, one at every level, right? So the one that I think is most significant is my junior year in high school. I won our county tournament, and that was our state qualifier. We only sent one per section back in the day in New York. So I was ranked second in the state. The guy that I wrestled was ranked first in the state. He was a senior. I was the junior. And my high school teammate, Nick Hall, who was, he was the guy that, I owe so much to. He was my workout partner. He was my mentor. He poured so much into me that year and beyond. He came up with a plan. He said, listen, we're going to scout this guy. We're going to go watch him. We're going to have a game plan so we can go and get the win when we need to. So we watched him for about 4 weeks. We went to a bunch of his matches. We had a game plan in practice. We were strategizing on how to wrestle. So that was really the first time that I had, that experience. This is my junior year, so I've been wrestling for 4 years, but that real experience of setting a plan, scouting, and executing a plan. So I think that's why it's so significant. It was a 1-1 match going to the third period. I was down. I got a reversal and I had to ride him out to win. And it was in our home gym, so we were hosting the county tournament. So I won that match and 1 and 2 in the state. But it was just a culmination of all the preparation, all the focus on having a specific plan. But again, like I said earlier, it wasn't me. It was, Nikki coming in saying, hey, this is what we're going to do to get you ready for that. So it wasn't, I just came with this idea that I want to scout. So, those are the things they're talking about God putting certain people in your life to help you be successful. So that's the most significant one that I think just because of what it meant and how it laid the foundation moving forward. My sophomore year, winning the NCAA tournament, my sophomore year, because that was sophomore year in college because, again, I had after my freshman year, I had set a goal to never lose another college match. And my freshman year, as I ran around the room at Penn State, they had all the national champs pictures on the wall. And every day my freshman year and every day my sophomore year, I looked at that wall and said, I'm going to get my picture on that wall. I'm going to get my face on that wall. And, so after winning my sophomore year, one, I had, took a step further with never losing another match. And two, I knew my picture was going on the wall there, which, that's not necessarily the motivation that you should really cling to, but it was something that was important that I set my focus on being better and getting my picture on the wall. So to win that as a sophomore, being the first sophomore for Penn State to win a national championship at the time. So it was a big deal, just kind of being a legacy. And then making the Olympic team in 2000, that was so high school, college, and international, those are the most memorable matches. And, with that, we talked about our rival with Steve and Neal. One thing that I did getting ready for 2000 was, so the history and tradition of USA Wrestling. I mean, there were so many times we had returning world champs I shouldn't say so many times. There were a few times where returning world champ got knocked off to make the Olympic team. So what I did was in my preparation, I went back. So Kenny Monday, Dave Schultz, right? Watched those matches. And I just went back to, so many times, 3 or 4 times in the system where we had an up-and-comer that had to knock off to beat the defending world champ to make the Olympic team. So I went back and I watched those matches, and it gave me that inspiration and motivation that, yes, it could be done. So I remember just that, again, that preparation stage on the mindset, not necessarily the physical. So each one kind of had a significant reason outside of, just, oh, it's a great win and, this felt good. It was, more significant into the foundation of who I am.
Sure. No, and that 2000 team, I mean, look, I was actually in Dallas also for the as a spectator for the trials, and it's like the freestyle team, at least, it was almost like the year of upsets to make the team.
Yeah.
You and Neil, but then Melvin Douglas, I think, beat Dominic Black, who you mentioned earlier, which was a little surprise at that point in their careers. Charles Burton beat Les Gutches. I mean, Brandon Slay over Joe Williams, I guess, although I guess they didn't meet in Dallas, but the U.S. Nationals. That was a huge win. That just had to have been a real fun team to be a part of.
Oh, yeah. No, it was awesome. And just the ups and downs and who made the team. And, in 2000, one thing that, we talked about the regional training centers earlier and the resident program in Colorado Springs. So 2000 is 8 weight classes. So top 3 in every weight class is national team. So 24 athletes. I think the resident athlete team had 8 of the 24 national team athletes coming out of the resident program. So, myself, Dominic Black, Brandon Slay, Kerry Bowmans, Ramiko Blackman. So those are some of the guys that were on that national team that came out of that, out of that resident program. So, again, with the regional training center model, obviously the Olympic Training Center wasn't the regional training center, but having those athletes, and I was a part-time resident, so I was out there back and forth, in 2000 State College. So and like Joe Williams was out there training. He was in Iowa City training there. So it was like we had that idea of you had a home base and you went somewhere else to train. So it was pretty crazy. And you remember Kerry Bones was, he was a sneeze away from making the world team, beating Terry Brand. So he was so it was just exciting all around. And Kerry Colott was on that team in 2000, which. Again, he had culmination. It was his 4th straight team making the teams in 97, 98, 99. So, Lincoln. So it was a great team. It was a great team to be a part of and, be able to do that. And so for me personally, 96 I tried and I was 3rd at the trials, and 2000 was my cycle. So the guys that were wrestling in 96 that I was able to be around, and then 2000, was kind of a shift. And then 2004, I became the old guy in that team. So in those 3 cycles, the people that I got to interact with and really learn from and be poured into by were amazing. And, so grateful for those experiences.
Yeah. It's like, I'm just thinking it's the cool thing about it is like you from our perspective, somebody that would never be, to that level, you think these guys are just, juggernauts that are hanging out like just with a singlet on all the time. But at the end of the day, it's teammates that are there for one another, still just at a different skill level and experience level. It just had to be some real, real amazing experiences. Again, I could do this all day. We will absolutely shift to coaching. We talked a little bit about, your transition now to the RTC program in California, but you spent a decade at Maryland. I guess first and foremost, what are you going to miss most about College Park? The wrestling program and, not as much the traffic and all the stuff that goes on there.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I've said it for a lot of different capacities, but it's all about the people. The guys that I had on the team, their families, getting to know them and really, it seems cliche to an extent, but for me, it was all about family. When these guys came in and became part of the program, they became part of my family, and I became part of their family. So I still keep in touch with a bunch of the guys. You're just checking in. Some of them are getting ready for their careers. Some of them are, getting ready for going back to college. Some of them are doing other stuff. So really, the people that I was connected with, a handful of the families, the parents. Still keep in touch just, through text message, phone call every once in a while. So it was all about the people and being able to, to pour in and to really receive that benefit of knowing some great people and having some interaction on the foundation of being able to have some guys that were able to compete at a high level. So I really missed the people. I really enjoyed the interaction and getting to know people on a high level, and obviously helping them reach their goals and achieve their goals on and off the mats. The thing that I say is probably what I'm most proud of is the athletes that I had that come through the program. They're all got jobs right now, as far as I know. They're not sitting at home, on the couch writing a name on the milk for mom and dad, like, hey, don't drink my milk. But they're all made a step in a positive direction to my goal is always to have people that are going to be positive members of society. So I think that we did a good job through the years of making sure that the athletes they learn life lessons that would help them when they become husbands and they become fathers to make this world a better place. So I think that's it's all about the people.
Okay. Now, the decision to stop was your decision to step down from the program. Would you mind talking about what went into that and the decision-making process and why you thought, after the 2019 season, it was the right time?
So, yeah, and in my contract, obviously my contract was up after that year. So when I'd say 2015, 16, when I started having negotiations with my, with the former AD, we talked about it, and it's like, okay, well, what are we going to do with your contract? And I said, well, I knew back then it was kind of time to transition, but I didn't know when and how. And so we talked about a 3-year contract, a 2-year contract, and I said, well, let's do a 2-year contract because it gets me through the full class of the 5 years in the Big Ten. So that recruiting class that I brought through the Big Ten, it was going to get me a chance to finish with them, and after that, I'll be able to really evaluate what I want to do. So that was the design early, was signing that 2-year contract, knowing that give me a little more flexibility later. And then when I talked with the administration, it was the idea of like, do I want to go in? Do I want to try to present a case where I need to extend and move forward and go, or just like, okay, the contract's over, ready to move forward and go a different direction. And so when we had the conversation, that's where the administration was kind of like, all right, well, we're at a point, contract's over, and we're not looking to renew right now. And at that point I was like, well, I'm good with it, and just had some things where I had to put in place. And actually the structure of the way things worked out, I actually was able to retire, go through the retirement channels from the University of Maryland. So there were certain benefits that I was able to keep. My kids get to go to Maryland for free, any state school for free. So I got that, I was able to keep my healthcare benefits. And, so being a retiree from the university, it's a much better deal. So instead of saying like, okay, I'm resigning and moving forward, it was a true opportunity to retire and go to something else. And, it just worked out well because of the timing of my contract being up. So my contract was over in June. And then after that, it was just a non-renewal. So it was, it was one of the things, like I said, I look back and I felt like for a while that it was time to do something different, and I didn't know how. And, it's kind of like when you're a parent, when you're married, you're like, when's the best time to have kids, right? There's never the right time. So you just got to kind of go with it. So with my contract being up, it was a perfect time to transition out and, make sure that I had those things in place to be able to, retire and keep the benefits that I had already accumulated. So it was a strategic plan, as well as, transition moving forward with the, with the university and the athletic departments, next steps.
I just want to make sure I understood that. So when you signed your final contract, you were thinking, okay, at the end of this one, you were thinking it's ready to transition to something else and take on a new challenge at that point?
Yeah, and it was more or less at the time, when I signed that 2-year extension, it was, I don't know what, but I really, at that point, after 2 years, I'm going to have a better idea of what I want to do. So it wasn't at that time that I said I knew that I was going to be done in 2 years, but I didn't want to sign a longer contract because I just knew at that point I was going to have that flexibility to make a decision. So, in that last year, I knew that it was the last year of my contract, and, just started to figure out what that was going to look like, and really had no clue. I didn't have another thing lined up. I didn't have a plan. It was just like I knew it was time to do something different. And I look back on it, obviously we talked before, right? That was the best thing, because if I had stopped and coaching and then right away jumped into something else, I wouldn't have had the time to reconnect with my family and do all the other great things that I was able to do. So again, I say I believe in God's plan, and I think that that's where He put on my heart and put that situation to be able to take advantage of, and not be left out in the cold, so to speak.
No, I got you. Now it seems, I almost hate to word it this way because of I don't think I should be comparing, the two of us as coaches or athletes, or after speaking to you men for that matter. But the so I know that I've coached at two different programs for, about 20 years now combined, a little less than that. But I knew a couple of years before I left my initial one that it was time, I wanted to change eventually. There never seems to be a good time to walk away. I had trouble bringing the best out of me, though, for those last couple of years, I thought. And part of it could be, I'm starting to settle down and create a family and stuff like that. Did you struggle with that at all as far as bringing out the best of you when you could kind of see a light at the end of the tunnel? Or were you still able to, kind of clear your head and go in with the same intensity and the same focus as you always would?
Yeah. That's the one thing that I'm always careful, because when I say, I knew that it was time to do something else, that's the easy conclusion of like, okay, well, if you knew it was something else, then you kind of, had one foot out the door. And that's definitely not the case. And I was all in. I was 100% focused. I mean, if you ask my wife, she would tell you that I was doing more of those last couple of years than I'd done in previous years, because, I feel like one of the areas that was a challenge was just continue to maintain support. Right. So it was a stronger effort on my part to really engage our community, engage our supporters, and making sure they stayed strong. I mean, we went through a little bit of a rough patch where we had some tough matches and some tough NCAA tournaments, but we're still competing at a high level. The last couple of years we had Yusuf Hamid, who was a 2-time All-American for us, and national team member, U23 World Team silver medalist. So we had those levels of commitment, but it was just one of those things where building and maintaining support took up a lot more of my energy instead of coaching and recruiting, in which I was very fortunate that Jimmy Sheptock was with me the last couple of years, and as an alum, he did a great job of taking the reins with recruiting and managing some of the other things that we need to manage. So I feel like in those last couple of years, as much, and I was fortunate that I was physically able to still get on the mats, and I wrestled with our guys a bit. But I spent a lot more time in those last couple of years trying to maintain and build support for the program than I would have liked to have. And I think that was a big thing that was a challenge, because I love being on the mats. I love working with the guys. So, going in the morning for workouts, coming in for afternoon practice, and then, having to be up late at night doing email campaigns and calling people and things like that. So I was putting the time in, no question. But it was just like, still being able to focus on helping the program and helping the guys and recruiting and doing those things was something that was, it was a challenge, but it was an opportunity for me to continue to build and really delegate with my staff and have them to be more engaged, which I think was really important for Jimmy, especially moving forward in his personal career. So I was all in with helping the program. I just had to help the program in different ways. And, it didn't have that one-to-one benefit, because like every phone call that I made to raise some money to, help the program didn't necessarily, coordinate or coincide with a win on the mat or, a championship placement. So I think that's really what I look back when I think about that is, the time spent was split more between the supplemental parts of coaching than the core parts of coaching, which, I still enjoyed because I was able to interact with people, but I definitely would have liked to be able to do more on the mat stuff related in those last couple of years. But it was part of what I had to do, and I was 100% all in.
No, I totally get it. Now, if my memory serves me correctly, you made the announcement that you were going to not continue after the Big Ten championship, but before the NCAA.
Yep.
Is there a benefit to that? Like I'm imagining, I take it there's a method behind the decision with it. Does that help the program at all? Like, doing it at that time, was there anything to the timing of it, or whether it be motivation or, something to help the school as an organization?
Yeah. And I think administratively, again, like there's never a good time to make that decision, right? So administratively, I think that, once we had the conversation and, the non-renewal was finalized, that it was, they wanted to get a head start. They wanted to be able to get out and be at the NCAA tournament and talk to potential coaches, and have those opportunities to, instead of having to, go out and seek people and, here and there, you're at the NCAA tournament, you got a core of coaches right there that you can interact with. So I think that was on their perspective. from a personal side and for the athletes, it was a little bit more of a distraction for the athletes that were going to the tournament, because I'm sure they had to answer the questions and wonder this and wonder that. So, but organizationally and structure-wise, I think it was the best thing for the organization, for the department, to have a head start on it. Personally for the athletes, I don't know if it was the best way to do it. But again, when you're dealing with that, there's really no good time for their athletes, because when you have that connection and when you have that, that desire to continue to move forward in a certain way, there's always going to be some shakeup with that.
No, and I think from there's probably two sides of it though, like for the athlete. So at that point, you talked about Yusuf I think he was the only qualifier that year, returning All-American, but had some ups and downs. I know he lost first round of the Big Ten championship, and then really battled back strong for a really good finish. Was there a little bit of like, hey, let's do this together? Let's one last dance, like for the two of them? I mean, I would just think the connection there. You guys obviously had a long journey, both of you guys being upper weights. I imagine there's some sort of motivational connection to that as well that was probably beneficial.
Yeah, I think so. So we had so Baby Jay Banisher, he was up for an at-large possibility. So we had him ready to go. So those are two guys that, again, starting with Baby Jay was one of the top guys that we had signed in that class entering the Big Ten. So he was engaged and connected with that process. So it was just like, we try not to, and me personally, try not to let, as talked about with Bruce Burnett, right? Try not to let emotions come in too much. So it wasn't any heightened. Any purposeful heightened sense of purpose through it. I mean, our goal was from the start, like Yusuf was trying to win a national championship. So that was the goal. I think he did say it a couple of times, hey, one last ride, because one, he was a senior anyway, so he was graduating. His eligibility was going to be done. So that focus. And then for us, we knew that we were going to be connected. He had aspirations of making world and Olympic team, so we were going to be connected. So just like, let's get out there and let's do what we can. And I think that, just through his process of, how he ran through that tournament, and, in the All-American round wrestling Sam Stoll, who was his nemesis, and, for him to get a dominant win against him, to be an All-American, it was just a culmination of all his work and dedication. And so, yeah, it was nice to be able to go through it with him, and as a relationship that we built, and really just that testament of, when you buy into the system, you do the things that you need to do, there's going to be a reward. And is it always going to be, with a title or a plaque? Not necessarily, but knowing that you gave everything you had. And, he was fortunate enough to be able to come out with that plaque. And it was a nice way to finish off with him, being an All-American, not once, but twice. And just especially everything that he went through, but also the strength of our relationship. So it was kind of that unspoken thing, but not something we tied on, because, you don't want to get too focused on different things that you lose sight of the original goal.
Sure. Now, what's your connection like with the wrestlers now? I know that Champions at Wrestle, we actually did a bus trip out for the Purdue match, and saw you in the stands and rooting the team on. Are you still very invested as far as the wrestlers that you coached like this season? Is it tough to let go?
Not. I guess that's a tough state. Like, let go. I mean, it was easy to let go because I'm not in that capacity. But I'll never not be connected to those athletes and to the program as a whole, because I said earlier, right, it sounds cliche, but it's a family. All those guys are part of my family. At some point or another, either they came by my house for different events. My kids were in the practice room. My wife got to know them. So I'm connected with all those guys forever. So that piece of it, I want to see them do well. I want them, to have the opportunity to be the best they can be on and off the mats. So I'm going to be supporting the program, forever. Knowing that I had spending 11 years in there, and all the relationships that I had in and out of the department, even, the other coaches that coach there out of the sport. So I'm always going to be connected to the program, and I love those guys with all my heart. So yeah, it was tough in some circumstances, because I know that, I want to have the best for them. I want to be able to help them. But at the other side, it was nice to be able to sit back and just truly be a fan that was not, vested interest is a relative term, but didn't have a vested interest in whether they won or not, outside of wanting them to go out there and do their best and be the best they can be. So it was nice to be able to sit in the stands, and, I did have to kind of check my emotions sometimes, just, I didn't want to be that crazy guy. We got a couple of crazy fans in the Maryland a fan box, and I didn't want to be that guy jumping up and down and all, but I definitely would start off under my breath, kind of like snap, shoot, fake, and just knowing what those guys are bringing to the table. And by the end of the match, I was straight up yelling sometimes, so I just had to keep that professional distance. But it was just great to be able to see those guys bounce back the way that they did and keep that resilient. It was a tough season, but you could tell they were going out there and they were giving everything they had. And sometimes they were overmatched, sometimes they were equally matched, and they went out and they fought hard, which is all we want to see for the athletes, to give themselves the best opportunity to be successful.
Did you make it to a lot of the matches this year? Were you there at the home ones pretty regularly?
Yeah, I think I made all but one home match. I was out of town for one, but I was at every home match. And then I had originally planned to go to the Big Ten tournament, but I was assigned to the Pan Am Championship coaching squad. So I was at the Pan Am Championship, so I missed the Big Tens. And then obviously we had plans to go to the NCAA tournament, but that didn't work out. So yeah, I was engaged and keeping, like I said, that professional distance. I kept in touch with Coach Clemson. He and I know each other. We go way back. So anything that I could do to help him out, and some of the athletes that were on the team that just pour in every once in a while, go grab lunch or grab dinner or grab a meal, that we could just, and not talk about wrestling, just about life in general. But obviously sometimes it would float back to wrestling, but we just really built on that friendship and that relationship as a family that we built through the years.
Yeah, one that stood out to me, and I don't recall ever meeting him, but Jahai Jones was one that I was keeping, and the name popped up. It seemed like to me, I'm sure it was a long journey for him, but he went to Oxon Hill High School in PG County, not necessarily a wrestling powerhouse. I don't mean that in a negative way whatsoever. Yep. Not a state champion, qualifies for the national tournament this year. Unfortunately, doesn't get to compete. Was he just a walk-on that came on, or did you see something in him out of high school that made you say, I want to have this kid in my lineup?
So a little bit of both. I mean, he has an amazing story, both on and off the mat. So he was a state runner-up in Maryland, and then he went to the high school nationals, and I think he ended up taking fourth. Lost a overtime ride-out match in the semifinals. I can't remember who he wrestled, but then ended up taking fourth at the high school nationals. Again, coming from PG County, not a strong hotbed of wrestling. He had some great coaches around him, but really, really self-motivated, self-driven. He came to Maryland on an academic scholarship. And he couldn't participate in athletics his first year because, they want to make sure he focused on his academics. So he would come in after practice in open rooms and all that stuff to roll around, but he wasn't on the team his freshman year. Built his way up, came out his sophomore year and continued to build and just got better. And he had some talent, but he was not at that high level. But his work ethic was off the charts. So he would do anything, anywhere, anytime. So it took a little getting used to some of the guys, just the nature of wrestling, right? You get somebody that walks on, that hasn't had a lot of stuff. Some of the guys were not as welcoming to him. So he had to earn his stripes. And he did. He put the time in and eventually, got in the lineup a couple times. And then, his fourth year, he ended up getting voted as a captain. He was one of our team leaders and, engaged. And during this whole time, I mean, he maintained above a 3.7 GPA in accounting. Awesome. So yeah, I mean, his wrestling, he had a lot of physical health issues that had, he jammed up his thumb, he had a sickness and, just a lot of things that he had to fight through. So his whole experience has always been a battle and he always came out on top. So that last year when he got voted captain and, he was in the mix to be our starter to go to the conference tournament. But with his academic successes, he had an opportunity to do a 3-week study abroad program over the winter session. He went over to Europe for 3 weeks and it was like, most people in general, especially, not kids from his background, from his neighborhood, most people don't get that opportunity. So he got the opportunity to go over there and he was like, Coach, what do I do? I'm like, yeah, you're going to miss a bulk of the season. Like this is kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity that you're going to get a full expense paid trip to Europe to work on your academics, to get this exposure. And we came to it and he decided to go and take that trip, which is amazing. Not many people get to do that. So he, had that, came back and had some ups and downs with his health and ended up not getting a chance to go to the conference tournament. So he was upset about it because he's a champion and he wants to go and he didn't get a chance to go to the conference tournament. So was going to graduate, had a job with KPMG and decided to come back for his 5th year, which was this past season. And then that last spring, he was named the Big Ten Medal of Honor. which is one of, the highest award that the conference gives. So coming from a walk-on that coming from a kid that wasn't even able to compete as a freshman, to build his way up to a scholarship athlete, to build his way up to a team captain, and then win the Big Ten Medal of Honor was such a great story. And there's a lot of stuff inside his journey that were left out, but he was just one of those guys that I'm so proud to say that I had a chance to spend some time with and help him along the journey. But he's one of those guys that it didn't matter where he was gonna make it. He was gonna be a success. So like I said, I'm just fortunate to have been able to hitch my wagon to him for a little bit, and I know when he makes it big, I'm gonna be right alongside, like, hey, can I borrow $5?
No, that's, it's amazing. Sometimes you just ask a simple question, the stories you hear. I had no idea about any of that. Credit to you too. Honestly, like, I would like to think that I wouldn't be too selfish to encourage a kid to take that kind of opportunity to go to Europe to better themselves academically and to experience something. I don't know that I'd be capable of that. I don't know if many coaches would in the bulk of the season. And hats off to you putting the most important thing first. I think that's a great thing. You talked about Coach Clemson a bit. What do you think? What do you think is necessary? What does he need to do in order to bring the program to the next level within the Big Ten? And how long do you see that taking?
Yeah, and the one thing about Coach Clemson is he's a bulldog, right? He sets his mind on something. He's going to grind and grind and grind until he gets a result. So that's really what it's going to take. And I think that the opportunity with the transition for him has given some renewed knowledge or renewed desire for the supporters to step up their support. I mean, really, when you're looking at it, if you're looking at the other teams in the conference and the amount of support that they have from the administration and from the community, the alumni base, it's huge. So you have to be able to at least be in the ballpark with that amount of support. I mean, support, a lot of times equates into dollars, which that's a big part. But even just butts in the seats, right? Getting out and watching and coming to events and coming to competitions and really supporting. And, I think that's really the biggest thing. And he's done a great job of building that coalition of people that are going to help support. But everyone that thinks that, what they're doing is enough just needs to be able to say, can I do a little bit more? And I think that's really the difference of making a championship organization, is that everybody's just giving a little bit more. And so I think that's what it's going to take to be able to be successful at the next level. Recruiting, he's got a good shot. He got some good guys coming in this year. He's got some good guys returning, some guys come off a red shirt. So, the foundation it's there, and just continue to build on it. But it really comes to just like anything anybody does. If you're supported at a high level, your chances of success are a lot higher. If you're not supported, it's your chances are a little bit lower. So I think that's really where he's got that right mentality of being a bulldog and staying on it, and really, not finding a way to yes is kind of a term that I've heard through the years. So finding a way to make these things happen. But it's all about support, having the community, having the alumni base, having the administration understand that in order to be successful in this sport, there are certain things that you need, and making sure that you can get those things.
Now, as far as the recruiting class goes, I take it a lot of the ones from this year. I think, was it Lucas Bird was one of them that committed to you, and then when the coaching change happened, he decided to decommit. Yep. Did you communicate pretty regularly for the new recruits coming in to try to keep them on board? Because you have firsthand experience with what that's like, correct? Like, coming from Penn State, you were recruited by one coach and then ended up wrestling for another. There was a coaching change right around then. Did you talk to a lot of the kids that you initially recruited, and then you decided to go in a different direction?
Yeah. I mean, we probably spent a lot of time with Lucas. I mean, he's the only one that decided not to come, and just really showing it. Obviously, with Coach Sheptock was still sticking around in the interim, and I think that was a big thing. Where if Coach Sheptock had stayed on staff, Lucas may have stayed, but he didn't have any connection. So, like you talk about, for me personally, Coach Lorenzo was the head coach, but Fritz was one that did most of the recruiting, so I was able to build that relationship with him. So when I knew that I would be wrestling for Coach Fritz, and I think that was a tough thing with Lucas, is during his transition, he didn't know who was going to be there. And I think if Coach Sheptock was there, he had a connection with it, and he may have continued to come. But since he didn't know who was going to be there, he made a decision, he took his time. He went and he saw a few places. So, but I kept in regular contact with him. I was talking with him. Coach Cheptok was talking with him just with the process of being committed to the university and to the athletic department. But it's a tough one. So for him, but all the other ones, especially the ones that were local, the Maryland kids, the kids that were from Delaware and New Jersey, and they were a little bit easier to keep on the hook because they just they had some reasons that they were connected to the university, and the coaches were important, but really the university and the experience with the program were a little bit higher on their list. So I think that was a big thing with the transition. But yeah, I mean, we tried to keep everybody intact because we knew that we brought them into the University of Maryland. And the experience that they were going to have, wrestling related, was a big part of it, but really just the opportunities as a student at the University of Maryland were key in having that experience overall. So it was an ongoing battle, and we made sure we gave them all the information and gave them the opportunity to stay with it. And like I said, Lucas was the only one that decided not to come aboard.
So if you were a high schooler and coming into college, why would you choose Maryland above, we can say other Big Ten schools or any school in general? What's the appeal, do you think, to Maryland that other schools might not offer, or even if they offer it, maybe not as efficiently?
Yeah, so there are a couple things, and obviously spending a long time recruiting to the school, a lot of things stick out. But one, just the connections in the area. I think something like 70% of Maryland alums stay in that DC area. So there's a lot of alums in the area for networking, for opportunities, for career opportunities, for internship opportunities. If you stay there long term, you're going to have a built-in network of people that you can rely on. The success of the athletic department, it's not a top tier where they're winning 10 championships a year, but they have high-level athletes that are making NCAA championship runs, NCAA championship team titles, and also putting people in a position to make world and Olympic teams. So if you're committed to success on and off the playing field and in college and international level, they've got the resources to really give you a shot at it. Education-wise, it's one of the top public schools in the country. A lot of investment in research, a lot of investment in growing the profile of the students that go there. So you're going to get a great education, and again, just having that flexibility to do a lot of stuff. For me, one of the things that I loved in the area so much was the connection of DC, Baltimore, Annapolis. So you can go to DC and get that city lifestyle. You can go to Baltimore, the Inner Harbor. You go down Annapolis by the water. 20-30 minutes up the road, you can be in the country. You can go to the beach. So it's really centrally located that you can get to a lot of stuff. And with the airports, with Dulles and with Reagan and with BWI, you can fly almost direct to anywhere. Public transportation, mass transportation. So it really had a lot of core things that really would help you have a full experience during your time in college. And and then when you tack onto it, the opportunity to be successful. So we're talking about wrestling at the highest level and competing in the Big Ten, without having to go into the Midwest and deal with the bitter winters and the extreme temperature changes and travel and having those challenges. I think it's really a no-brainer to have them on your list.
Oh, for sure. No, it's now like there's a time when you first started, it was ACC, which I thought was an underrated conference. A lot of times they probably wouldn't say it was a powerhouse. Then you made the transition to the Big Ten, where Penn State was Big Ten when you were wrestling there, correct? Yep. The entire time. Now you were you in favor of that transition? Did you like that idea, or did you prefer the ACC when you were as a coach?
No, I was definitely in favor. It's like iron sharpens iron, right? And rising tide raises all boats. So I knew that going in. So just the one thing, and it's not necessarily consequential when you can't put a finger on it, but just the reality exists. So a perfect example in the ACC, Josh Asper was his junior senior year. He was ranked second in the country the whole year. ACC tournament. He loses in the finals to Pete Yates from Virginia Tech. So Josh was ranked second. Pete was ranked fourth. Josh has only lost the whole year. Come around to the NCAA tournament. Josh was the 7th seed at the NCAA tournament. Now there was a guy, I can't remember his name right now, for Iowa State that lost in the Big 12 finals, and it was the second or third loss of the year. He actually was ranked 4th, and he was the 3rd seed at the NCAA tournament. Josh was ranked second, ended up being the 7th seed in the NCAA tournament. So it's like, is that just bias from, Big 12 wrestling versus ACC wrestling? You get a guy who loses in the ACC. And again, he lost to the number 4 ranked wrestler. The guy from Iowa State lost to an unranked wrestler. And, so I know the rankings and the seedings don't go hand in hand, but that was just like that. All right, what's going on? 2 years later in the Big Ten, Jeffrey Alexander, he starts off the year ranked top 10 at 133. He goes and has a tough Midlands tournament. I think he was ranked 8th or 9th in the country. He goes and has a tough Midlands tournament, loses to a couple guys that he shouldn't have lost to. The next round, the rankings come out, and he didn't move in the ranking at all. So it's just like that idea of wrestlers in the Big Ten have that, hey, they've got to be better because they wrestle in the Big Ten. So I think that being in the Big Ten elevated our exposure to the program. When you go in, you got that Big Ten next to your name. When people are going through rankings or going through selection process, the built-in bias of the Big Ten's better than everyone else. So it was a benefit there. But also for us, my first year in the Big Ten, we had Iowa, Ohio State, Minnesota, and Penn State all on our campus for home duels. In a situation, a school like Maryland, maybe you get one of those schools every couple of years, but to have all four of them come in 1 year, and the way that the cycle of scheduling was, every 3 years, those schools are going to be on our campus. Every year, you're going to be able to wrestle. Every 2 out of 3 years, you're going to be able to wrestle those teams either home or away. So that idea of being able to compete with the elite teams, having them come to your campus, getting on their campuses, having that experience, that's something that was invaluable because, in the ACC, you had an opportunity to get those schools, every once in a while, maybe a Big Ten team here or there. But just to be able to challenge yourself and see where you are was a big part of it. Now, obviously, that level of competition was a lot higher, but that's where you like I said, iron sharpens iron. So if you're getting ready for an ACC schedule, and I don't think any of the athletes there really take this to heart, but you got to be ready for 1 or 2 matches that are really going to, push you to your limits. And now it's getting better, especially in the last few years. But back then, where now in the Big Ten, there's no off matches. There's no opportunity where you can kind of sit back and say, oh yeah, I got an easy weekend. You got Friday, Sunday matches against top 20 competition every week. You gotta be up. So that's what I was excited about. And we had some of our guys on our team that were excited about that. Some of them may not have been as excited about it, and just kind of building through and have that culture shift, which takes a little while when you have someone that's in the ACC for 3, 4, 5 years, to shift it to a Big Ten mentality. And even as an athletic department, for them to shift from the ACC mentality to a Big Ten mentality, it takes a little bit of time, and I think they're getting close to it now.
Do you think it's challenging at all? Like, you used the term hotbed earlier. Maryland in the national spectrum certainly isn't considered a hotbed for wrestling. Is it challenging not having that local hotbed of talent to recruit from, and that local appeal for a lot of the people to build a championship program or a contending one in the Big Ten?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, when you're dealing with resources, you got to have the best opportunity to be successful. But I think that's one thing that was great about Maryland is that the guys that were coming out, the best guys that were coming out of Maryland were really good. I mean, obviously, you look at Kyle Snyder, who's a Maryland guy that came back in the day. You look at Mac Lunas, you look at Rico Ciparelli. So, I mean, there's a lot of individuals that have come out through the years. What I feel like the biggest challenge in Maryland is getting the state collectively on the same page of how to make the state better. There's the Southern Maryland, the Western Maryland, the Baltimore. Like, there's so many different factions, which that happens everywhere. But ultimately, when you look at Pennsylvania, for example, Young Guns is one of the premier clubs in the country, right? And so you look in that room, and you got 3 or 4 or 5 guys that may wrestle in the state tournament later on, and they're all in there getting after it, right? They're pushing each other, they're getting better, and so again, they're pushing each other to get better. Where in Maryland, a lot of times that you got some pockets of places that just want to stay isolated because their most important thing is to win the Maryland state tournament, to win the duels in Maryland, and kind of hang their hat on that, but not really expand and grow and get outside of it. So I think that's the opportunity that Maryland has. If you can get the best guys in the state together more often to get them to train and to push them, and then go into Pennsylvania, go into Virginia, go into New Jersey, and some of the local places to get some high level exposure. I think it's real easy to take those those kids that are right on the fringe of being on the top tier and take them over to the top tier. But it's about exposure and cooperation and collaboration. I think that's something that a lot of efforts in Maryland have been tried to do that, but it really hasn't really caught a ton of momentum because a lot of the factions are really focused on just what they can do within their little circle. So I think that's an opportunity to go. And with that being said, you just think about the successful people that have come out of the state under this system where it's been so divided. Just imagine how much better and how much work you've done if you get a little more unification.
Is that a coaching philosophy that needs to change? Like coaches need to kind of change their viewpoint on it, or like administratively, at least I've only coached in the public school, but there's a lot of restrictions that get placed on us as far as the competition we're allowed to seek out. Where do you think it needs to start? With the coach, with the governing bodies? Like, where do you see which one's the chicken, which one's the egg here?
Yeah, no, and I think it comes with coaching first, because if there's a situation where, I'm a coach and I've got a stud, right? And it's like, okay, in my room, he's crushing everybody in my room, right? He's not being challenged at all. So now I've got to say, okay, in order for this guy to get to the next level, I've got to find some other resources for him, So, if I'm at this school and I know up this school, he's got the number 2 with the guy, number 1 guy in the state at another weight class, or maybe even at the same weight class, I need to be able to say, hey, listen, we got to get our guys together, because yes, my guy's probably going to win a state championship, but is he going to be able to go out and win a national championship? Is he going to go out and be successful in college? So the coaches have to be able to step back and say, whether it's another high school, or whether it's in a regional training center, or whether it's another state, like coaches have to be able to step back and say, yeah, I'm okay with my athletes going other places, or I'm okay with other athletes coming to me so I can help my guys get better. And I think that's really what is. And one thing, if you look at the growth of women's wrestling nationally, but even in Maryland, that's what the women and the girls, they have to do, right? They have to seek out, because they can't just stay, if they're the only girl on their team, they can't just stay and work out, because they're going to wrestle with boys all the time, but they need to go out and find some girls to wrestle with. So the best girls in the state, the best girls in the country are going out and seeking other high-level competition. And a lot of times it's boys, but majority of times it's girls, and they can go out and see. So I think that's why girls wrestling has grown so much, because they're able to seek out ththose opportunities outside of their own little comfort zone and making that commitment. So I think that's something that is led by coaches. So obviously, administratively, if you're a public school and you can't compete in some of the events that the private schools can go to, that's a limiting factor. But if you have an opportunity in the summertime to do a camp, or to bring in a coach, that can come in and help you with this or help you with that, I think that's it. So yeah, I think it starts with coaches of being able to kind of open their perspective a little bit and see, okay, well, the one thing that I always say is, when you get a coach that think he knows everything about anything, that's when you kind of hit a wall. To this day, I've gone and I've watched high school wrestling, and I've seen a high school kid do something like, wow, that's pretty sweet. Let me figure out how to implement, and then take that and shape it and learn it, and then pass it on to the high level thing. And someone will say, well, where'd you learn that? I say, oh yeah, I saw some kid in this tournament in Maryland that did this, and I thought it was pretty good. And and they're like, oh, that's not. And then you show it, and they're like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. So really just continue to learn and be open. And I think it starts with the coaches.
I really hope that people take that to heart. Like, if there's one thing people take out of this interview, you have one of the best wrestlers from this century, and as Jason pointed out, last century as well, giving advice on how we can make the sport of wrestling better in our area, and how we can make these kids improve. I really hope there's one thing that you take out of this. It's that last part right there. No, that's absolutely incredible. At Maryland, and we talked about administration a little bit, is there anything that you think the administration at Maryland needs to be doing different to allow Maryland to reach that next level?
Yeah, I mean, again, with the idea of what it means to be a Big Ten wrestling program, it's not just having the logo next to your name on a bracket sheet, right? It's really that full-fledged commitment and really just engaging engaging the program. Like, what do you need? How can we do it? It's like, obviously finances make a big part of it, but there's not a lot of money for everybody. There's never enough money for everybody to get. But the idea of, all right, hey, what are some things that we can do to elevate? Is it facility enhancement? Is it the opportunity of exposure and marketing and getting engaged with fundraising and really pouring into some of our donors and challenging them to step up, to support. So I think that's really the big thing that any administration needs to do, is just recognize the landscape and say, okay, I'm going to give you $10 to go out and go shopping, and everyone else you're shopping with has $100. Okay, but I want you to go out and I want you to get everything that those guys are shopping with. I want you to go and come back with, come back with a prime rib for dinner. I'm going to give you $10 and, you come back and you're like, you have chopped liver. And it's like, well, what's happened? Well, prime rib costs $80. All I had was 10. Well, we want to eat prime rib. Well, all we have is chopped liver because that's all the resources that you gave me. So I think it's just really recognizing, again, it comes back to money, which isn't everything, but it's a big part of it. But what type of resources and support that the athletic department can elevate to really put, Maryland on a closer. I mean, you're not going to level a playing field with Ohio State that has, a $200 million operating budget for the athletic department. But, are there resources that can help with recruiting, with admissions, with opportunities, with networking, with jobs, with internships? Like, are those things that you can really enhance to, make that kid that's looking at Ohio State, Penn State, Rutgers to come over to Maryland? Are there other opportunities, incentives that you can do to the donors and to the alumni to keep them engaged with the program, to really make them feel like the department is committed to having success at this high level? So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities to really just elevate and, getting creative, not being there right now and not knowing what the specific needs are. The administration will be able to be in a position that they say, okay, these are things that you've identified. And if it's a list of 10 things, and, we can work on the first 5 and then, put the other 5 in the back burner. That's going to help elevate the program.
Are you confident it's heading in that direction?
I believe so. I mean, I'm sure you guys followed that they just got for their RTC, they got Helen Maroulis and John Morrison on board, and I assume that was, a financial commitment and investment. The administration has to be tied to the RTC and, being able to have that flexibility of being able to run the organization. So I think it's moving in the right direction. Like I said, recruiting wise, they've got some good kids and, had some opportunities to bring some more in. So I think it's moving in the right direction, not being in there, boots on the ground. On the outside looking in, it seems like they're trending upward for sure.
Now, what can the Maryland wrestling community do to help with that build? You talked about putting butts in seats. Would you like to see more attendance at matches and support in that way? Or what can the Maryland wrestling community do? Because I would imagine if we could help contribute to build this, this program, University of Maryland, up, it's just going to strengthen the sport of wrestling and the skill level in our area. Yeah,
definitely. Butts in the seat. That's a big thing. Coming out, supporting initiatives, supporting events. I know that they have their, golf outing that goes on and, getting there, but banquets, anything they can do. And really, I mean, it sounds kind of cheesy, right? But if there's a stud athlete that's considering, their options, have them, try to get them to consider Maryland pretty heavily, because, it starts with somebody, right? Somebody's got to be the first person, and it just continues to build. And through the years, they've gotten, this recruiting class, they've got some of the top kids in the state that have committed. So continue to funnel that in, but also the idea of, having some people that have connections outside of the state to support the program. If you've got a buddy that's got some opportunity to make an impact, financially, socially, a job opportunity. If you have that, reach out and say, yeah, we've got, these are the things that can help enhance the program. So, obviously within the state, keeping everything within the state, but also just not being, like we said with the coaching, right? Not being afraid to reach out to other networks to bring them on board to help elevate. So I think it's just really, it's reaching out, showing up, reaching out and staying connected. And, really just, obviously everybody knows that if the more success you have, the more support you get, and that's important, but you got to start somewhere. You can't say in a situation, well, when they start winning, I'll support them, when you need support to start winning, right?
Sure. You'll be walking in a circle at that point.
Right. We'll give money. We'll give money once they reach this. Well, in order to reach this, you need money. So I think it's that idea of taking that, not as strong as the leap of faith, but just really being committed to, helping grow and helping build, and then, trust that the good things will come after, you make that, when you show up for a match and you bring a bunch of people in and, maybe the match doesn't go the way that you would like it to go, but you're still there supporting. Those kids say, hey, we've got a support network. So that gives a little bit of a boost for them to say, hey, I'm going to go here and I'm going to fight a little bit harder because I know my state's coming back here to root me on. They're supportive of me, win, lose, or draw. And it continues to go. So that cycle continues to build and grow. And it's just like, again, it has to start somewhere. Somebody's got to go and say, all right, I'm in regardless of what, and I'm going to be committed, instead of having those contingencies, which, which are limiting factors for success in a lot of cases.
Now you've been around for the state of Maryland for over a decade now. How would you classify the skill level of wrestling in the area, and do you think it's progressing in a positive direction, like over the time from you started to where it is right now?
Well, yeah, and again, I could selfishly say, yeah, well, since I was in Maryland, the wrestling has gotten so much better, right? But no, I honestly think that the level of wrestling has improved. With the opportunities, exposure of some of the great people that have come through the state in the last 10 years. I mean, through our program, the people that we were able to bring through, but even at American, even though it's not Maryland, it's DC, and George Mason, that's in Northern Virginia, and then obviously Naval Academy. So if you look at the number of people through the last 10, 12 years that have come through the state as coaches, as connected to the sport, it's definitely taken a step in the right direction, and I think that's a true testament to the potential that the state has. More coordinated, more focused effort. I think 3 out of 4 years they had the NWCA All-Star Meet in the region, and that brought a lot of attention to wrestling in the area, and obviously brought a lot of support. The Wrestlers in Business Network has been very active at elevating opportunities. So yeah, it's definitely trending up. The wrestling as a whole, I believe, has gotten better. Some of the teams and individuals that have come through that are successful there, you see them going on to the high level competition. Obviously the Kyle Snyders, the Helen Maroulises, but then you look at Aaron Brooks, those type of people that are doing great things that come from the foundation. The key is to be able to keep a lot of that talent in state. But yeah, I mean, just seeing where they're developing, there's a really good class of young kids that have grown. I think they're sophomore, juniors in high school right now they're going to be pretty relevant on the national scene. So yeah, it's going up. I think the nature of wrestling as a whole has gotten better. Just the rules and freestyle, the rules in high school, and just the growth of women's wrestling. And Maryland's definitely poised to be one of those states that can. Are you ever going to catch Pennsylvania and New Jersey and all those schools? You have to have that aspiration, but we can definitely, as a state, Maryland could definitely move up in the ranks and continue to produce some high level athletes and high technical levels, high skill levels. Just positive members of the wrestling community to elevate the sport.
No, and I feel like I've taken up your entire morning. I don't just have a couple of more, and Jason, I don't know what you have also, and then a couple of mailbag questions from people that wrote in. The one thing is, and I asked this about you as a competitor, but how do you think, and how do you want to be remembered as as far as your impact with the Maryland wrestling program?
Yeah, so I think similar to as an athlete, I mean, I want people to believe that I care deeply for the people that I was serving, right? It wasn't just about winning championships. It wasn't just about getting your hand raised. I mean, that was a big part of it, but I really believe that I poured into athletes. I gave everything good to give them the best opportunity to be successful in life, not just on the mat. So, and I arguably say maybe a strength and a weakness, but it was for me, for that kid to get, for Jahi Jones to be able to graduate from Maryland and get a degree and be better in his life, that to me is more important than how many matches he won, right? So, the unfortunate thing in athletics usually is you're measured by your wins and losses. I think Dabo Swinney said it, the measure of a coach isn't about how many wins and losses he has. It's what type of father, what type of husband, when their athletes go on and, 10, 15 years down the road, that's really the true measure of it. And I'm hopeful that, all the athletes that have come in, even things that they may not have agreed with, even things that they may not have had a great positive experience, that gives them an opportunity to be a better parent, be a better father, be a better husband, and, be a better employee. So that's really what I would want to be remembered for, is that, yeah, he cared deeply about the whole person. And, he knew X's and O's and singles and doubles, but he also cared about the heart and the success of his athletes.
Well, for what it's worth, whenever your name comes up, one of the first things I hear everybody say that's interacted with you is that's just a good guy. And I mean, that's something that it seems so simple, but that's super, they might say great guy more often than they say good, but that's got to mean something at the end of the day, what kind of person you are. that goes along with also, your contributions as a coach and as an athlete. So, I'm not going to ask you about a favorite moment while you were at Maryland. There's tons of things to, especially, ACC Coach of the Year and ACC championships. And, I know while you're at Maryland, you got inducted into the Hall of Fame as well. But, on the other side, is there anything you would have changed? Do you think if you could change one thing, is there anything, or with your faith and your philosophy that everything happens for a reason, do you not focus on that at all?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's and that's kind of like the $50,000 question, right? And I don't. I believe that everything happened for a reason, and every decision led me to where I am today. I would say that just being able to, I would, and again, I'm here where I am because of that. So I would looking back to come to that realization of being present as a parent. That would be something that if I could have been more present as a parent earlier. I think that would have been a benefit. But I think just going through the process and how we got here, it was a parent and a husband, it was part of that process. But that would be the one thing just, as a coach. So I would encourage that as coaches that are coaches, that are parents, that have families, to really, really focus on the total picture of, being present with your family. Like, there's gonna be times when you're all in with the response, or any job, not even just coaching, right? You're going to be all in, but recognize that win, lose, or draw, no matter what happens at work, when you come home, those people that you're coming home with, those people you're coming home to will love you and care about you no matter, if you won a championship or you made the big sale, or, if you were, kicked to the curb, they're still going to love you no matter what. And that's the most important thing. And so I would say that was one thing that I look back on and just, again, it's not a regret because everything happens for a reason, but, just having that realization of the being present for your family is really the key. And a lot of coaches, and successful people at different levels, they lose that. And you see some people that may be, chasing the proverbial brass ring. And, when they get it, they have no one to share it with because their family is distant. They don't know who they are. They don't have a connection with those. So I think that's an important thing to share, that it's important to really be present while you can. And I will give you one good moment. I mean, like you said, there's a lot, but I think that, what pops in my head all the time is that we had a kid named Kyle John that wrestled, similar story to Jahi, walked on, earned his way up to be a scholarship athlete. And he was a 3-time NCAA qualifier. And he was ACC Scholar Athlete of the Year, ACC champ as a senior. He was always right around that 10 or 12 ranking. So I think his senior year, the year after he graduated, they expanded the seeds up to 16. So he always missed out on a seed at the NCAA tournament. But he's a story that I always shoot back to because he wasn't, I think he was 5th or 6th in the state coming out of Pennsylvania out of high school. Wasn't going to be the guy. We had a couple of guys that were on paper ahead of him when he came in, when I got here, and he ended up just put his head down, worked really hard, graduated in 4 years, did his 5th year, got his master's degree in engineering, stayed around to help coach for a semester while he finished his master's degree. But just a great kid all around that, didn't necessarily reach his goals on the mat, but he was really close, but he had an incredible experience. And I always look to him because, if you looked at him coming out of high school, there probably wasn't a ton of expectation for him to do what he did, and for him to turn that experience into such a positive. That's like the example that we all aspire to as coaches, to make sure that take a guy that's at this level and they finish there at this level, and not just in the sport but in life in general. And so that's one of my favorite stories that I talk about, that kind of transcends my time.
Oh, it's amazing. Before I get to the mailbag, Jason, did you have anything, bud?
No, man. I mean, this is great. I'm just sitting here
taking it all. I'm the same way, just taking it all in. We appreciate it, Coach. We did ask people to write in a couple of questions. Brian Hamper, he asked, how loaded were some of those 1993, 1994 teams at Penn State, and could they have contended in 1995 if Colette had stayed?
Yeah, so 95, we finished – it's kind of funny you talk about this. So we finished in dual meets, we finished 5-12 in dual meets in 1995. So, I mean, you think about a Penn State team, 5-12, right? No one ever talks about that year, and rightfully so. But we finished 5th in the country with the 5-12 dual meet. And And that was the year that I was upset. That was the year that so I finished third. John Hughes won, and Sanchiro Abe was second. And if I would have won in the semis that made the finals, I think we would have finished second as a team. And if all of us had won a championship, I think we might have been in the hunt to win a title. So that was the year without Kolat. So if Kolat were on the team that year, and if I didn't lose, I think we would have been able to definitely make a run. 93 team, we had 3 guys in the finals: Kolat, Josh Robbins, and Troy Sunderland. And like I said, if we had won any of those matches, we would have won a team title. 96 was the year that I took off. I took a redshirt year, and I think we finished 4th or 5th as a team. But Stephen Neal, he got like 3 forfeits on the backside. So this was back before they changed the bonus point structure or the scoring of the NCAA. So it was a full point advancement on the backside plus bonus. So he got like 3 forfeits on the backside. I think Bakersfield ended up finishing 4th as a team that year on the strength of that. So, we were 5th as a team. And then in 97, my senior year, we finished 10th. And they had Jeremy Hunter had beaten Jesse Whitmer for 3rd and 4th at the Big Ten tournament.
Sure.
And Jesse was a national champ that year, but they actually seeded Jesse ahead of Jeremy at the NCAA tournament, even though Jeremy had beat him at the Big Ten. So that could have been a switch where, who knows what Jeremy could have done that year. And we had a couple guys that were injured. So those that stretch through the 90s was a pretty good run. And, we were right knocking on the door every year. And just so, if we had, one more piece or one thing that went a different way, we could have come away with, a couple of titles pretty easy. So, but yeah, so the answer to the question, I think with 95 with Kolat, we could have had a pretty good shot at taking it all.
Gotcha. Steve Johnson wrote in, while recruiting, what accomplishments stand out the most? What really stands out that makes you say, I've got to have this wrestler on my roster?
So there's 2 things. Obviously, the number one thing, accomplishments are important, but the number one thing that I looked at is coachability. Someone that is going to be, if I say, hey, try this, they're going to say, okay, they're going to try it. Maybe they don't like it. Maybe they don't think it's going to work, but they're going to try it versus the other side of, no, that's not going to work. I don't do that. So having a coachability, and right up there with coachability is a good person, right? You want to have somebody, there are a lot of knuckleheads that are great wrestlers. But you want to have someone that has high character, high quality. So, that you don't have to worry about on the weekends what that person, getting that phone call Saturday night, Sunday morning on what happened. So obviously people change and things can happen, but character and coachability are the 2 top things. As far as accomplishments, if you're competing at a high level, freestyle Greco success is nice. If you have someone that goes out and places in, Fargo at freestyle championships, that makes a big difference. If you have someone that wins a lot, one thing that's really a credit, especially if you're in that battle for those next tier guys, the guy that comes back and takes 3rd, that a lot of times that guy is almost as as valuable as the guy that wins. So if you have someone that's 1-1-1 all the time, yeah, they're great. But when someone gets knocked off and they have to fight back for 3rd, that's a real testament to that athlete. So obviously, if you have someone that's a 4-time undefeated state champ that never lost a match, yeah, let's go get them. But if you have somebody that may have won a couple titles but taken 3rd, a bunch of times, that's able to fight back, that's a big deal. And competition on the high level events. So, whether it's out at the junior nationals in Fargo, whether it's the high school nationals, where you can go in those high level events and compete and do well. Ironman, Powerade, those type of events are big, but really, like I said, the character and the coachability are the big things. And, someone that can fight for a win, whether it's, gutting out that overtime win or coming back and taking 3rd. I think those are the things that show success at the next level.
Gotcha. So I normally refer to this guy as friend of the show. I think I'm going to reevaluate that because in his high school career, Casey Camp beat one of Jason and mine's favorite wrestler. He coached a kid this year that beat another one of my favorite wrestlers in the state finals. So we'll call him enemy of the show, Casey Camp.
Enemy of the show.
He said, what does Kerry enjoy more, wrestling as a competitor or as a coach?
Yeah, you know what? That's you get that. That's one of those $1 million questions, right? So, what do I enjoy more? as a coach, I'm able to pour into more people. As a competitor, I was really focused on myself and what I need to do, and using my teammates and using the people around me to help develop myself. So enjoying being able to pour into more. But actual execution, I think as an athlete, having that control of, hey, I'm going to complete. When I'm out there, I have a chance. If I'm losing, I have a chance to go get a takedown. If I'm winning, I have a chance to defend, and, having that control. As a coach sitting on the side and not having that control, just say, hey, we coached him up as best he can. Now you got to go out there and let it go. So I think the stress level increases a lot more when I'm a coach sitting on the side, even though I know he's prepared, even though I know that they're ready to go. I still have to sit there. And no matter how much I yell, no matter how much I encourage, they're out there doing it. So I enjoy the fact of, as an athlete, to be able to have it kind of in your own hands. As a coach, the preparation is great and the reach that you can get to, but the stress level when they're actually competing is a lot higher. So I don't know, that's a kind of a dual answer, but I like on the sidelines, I like being an athlete. In the preparation, I like being a coach.
Okay. Yeah, I love it. I appreciate everybody that participated in this week's mailbag. We'll try to do this every week, every time that we have a guest. Coach, again, you took your entire morning to speak with us. I'm sorry for putting you on the spot now, because I just thought of it. That's the way my brain works. But, this is kind of a platform for you as far as a goodbye to the not your individual wrestlers at University of Maryland. That would be, a little bit more sentimental, I think. But the Maryland wrestling community, are there any parting words, any goodbyes that you want to say while you have a platform?
Yeah, no, I think I'm glad it popped in your head because, and I will always forever be connected to the Maryland wrestling community, as I said earlier. So, it's not necessarily a goodbye, more like a see you later. So, but I truly appreciate the amount of support that I had throughout the years. I never went into a gym. I never went to an event. I never felt any kind of negative feelings, any kind of animosity. I felt like I was always accepted. Being a New York guy that wrestled in Pennsylvania, that came to Maryland as a pseudo adoptee, I felt at home, and that's something that's really important. My family was always welcome at any events. If I take my kids to an event, and somebody always found time to spend time and talk with them and play with them, and my wife always had great interactions. So I'm just truly thankful and blessed that the community accepted me and really gave me an opportunity to spread my wings and have an impact on so many. Because it is, it's easy to just kind of dismiss someone and be like, this guy's not worth our time. But I never felt that way in the community, and I'm just really thankful. So appreciate the connection. And as I said, I'm always going to be connected to Maryland wrestling. I look forward to be able to pour into the community as much as possible, whether it's virtually like something like this, or, getting back and doing camps and clinics through the years, or just, however I can do, because I love wrestling, and Maryland wrestling is a big part of that.
That's amazing. Now, Jason, I think that's a good one to close it on. Is there anything else you got, buddy?
No, I just feel really bad for whoever our next guest is.
I
think we might have trouble there. I'm not following Kerry. Coach, I mean, I really appreciate your time. Like I said before we even started, these things just before it's so long, and I think this was great, and it was awesome. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm glad I could share with you guys, and definitely keep me posted. I'd love to do it again sometime. And like I said, I want to be whatever I can to help as much people as I can. So let me know. Keep me in mind.
Absolutely, would love to have you back. I do want to say thank you, not only for the show, but just for your contributions to Maryland wrestling. From on behalf of the entire community, like 10 years of your life, relocating your family here and giving everything that you had to help build the sport around here. We truly appreciate it. I don't know if it gets said enough. So just want to take this opportunity to thank you, and then especially thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm glad I could. So look forward to keeping in touch for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys very much for joining us today. It's another episode in the books. I hope you stuck with us the entire time. Another great one. As always, thank you for supporting Champions That Wrestle, and we'll see you next time.